Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. I hope your Thursday was outstanding and amazing, and you're very excited as the week comes to a nice close. As we know, tomorrow is a Friday. We're excited about that, but it's not here yet. And we've got some business to attend to today. You probably heard about this order from this federal judge out in Texas who made an order that's not very Texas-like today. We're not happy about it. We'll go through it, but the highlight on this puppy is look at this. They are going to be appointing essentially the ACLU as attorneys for the class of Tren de Aragua gangbangers. Signed here by Fernando Rodriguez Jr. And it's Lee Gellernt, or whatever the hell his name is, Lee Gellernt, same guy who called another Texas judge and was screaming at him on the phone. We remember that story that we talked about here, and we got the full transcript, of course, of that phone call over at watcherlodge.com. Lee Gellernt. So this Texas judge obviously is going to get appealed, but not only is he appointing the ACLU gangbang lawyers, but he's also stopping the deportations for now. And we'll go through it. So he came out with 3 different orders today. And this is a pretty interesting one because he's essentially invalidating the Alien Enemies Act by saying Tren de Aragua is not covered under the statute, saying they're not a nation, they're not a government, and so you can't apply it to them. So in other words, class action for gangbangers, and now they're getting appointed attorneys. And months ago, we were joking about this. We're like, watch, they're going to appoint the ACLU to be their lawyers. Watch this, like pro bono attorneys. And the slow drip has been happening, and here it is. We're living in wild times. So in other words, the illegals, they're not only getting due process as they always got, but they're getting due process plus and pro bono lawyers appointed by the court, by Judge Rodriguez, obviously. So we'll go through that. He had a couple of different orders that came out. Permanent final injunction. We'll read through what the latest is on that and then see what some of the reaction is. Obviously, there's going to be some appeals coming up on this, but Stephen Miller was out at the White House and he was unleashing on the judges and the media and explaining what a scam and racket this whole thing is. So we'll come back to that. Now, second segment, we got a Kilmar update because you may have seen this percolating around. But as you remember, we already talked about Kilmar, the wife-beating, human trafficking, MS-13 gangbanging, Abrego Garcia illegal, who is in our country. He had 2 order of protection cases filed against him, essentially restraining orders, filed by his wife, Jennifer Vasquez. And after you see this one, you start to wonder, maybe she's under some pressure, some scrutiny. And so we'll read through exactly what's going on in here because she was saying, this dude was saying, listen, I can unalive you. I can eliminate you, love, wifey, and no one's going to do a thing about it because he's in the country illegally and he's a gangbanger. So the situation with this dude just gets more and more wild by the day. We've got more arrests that are happening. We've got this wild prosecutor. So I wanted to share this with you today. Oh, it's just outstanding. This is a prosecutor, a snotty, whining, crying baby prosecutor called Sarah Levine, who's screeching about getting fired from Ed Martin. And we support Ed Martin, by the way. Hopefully that confirmation goes off without a hitch. Any senator who does not support Ed Martin is going to face the wrath of the MAGA movement, no doubt about it. So we'll just come back on that. But this prosecutor, you can just see it in her face, crying about how she got fired. It's actually quite enjoyable because this is how they are. This is how they act with everybody. It's kind of a shocking thing that they have any power at all. So we'll come back on that. We got some Kilmar updates. Ilhan Omar was saying F you. So if you got little ones on the show today, I have to apologize because we're going to hear an F word bomb coming from a congresswoman called Ilhan Omar, who I'm pretty sure married her brother, which is disgusting. But she's telling everybody to F off because she doesn't want to answer questions about gangbangers. Sounds like an MS-13 gangbanger herself. Maybe that's why she's using that language. Like she's got Kilmar on the brain. Just feeling pretty Kilmar'd out. So we got that. We'll hear from Tom Homan, all that and more. And then I wanted to spend a little time on this update on the Supreme Court because we've got a new filing that has come in from our friend John Eastman. You remember who he is. That guy got put through the ringer from the last Democratic lawfare onslaught maniacs And he and his organization, called the Constitutional Council Group, submitted this as amicus curiae on the 14th Amendment issue on birthright citizenship. And this was good because he lays out for us the truth about how all of this works and shatters the facade of the birthright citizenship hoax, which is obviously a scam. Never was the case that illegals who drop babies here get citizenship. Never was. But somehow it's been perverted into that status quo, but not anymore. And so, my friends, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful Thursday. Thank you for being here and for joining us. And shout out to our membos. We missed our membos this morning. Your boy was traveling, had a great dinner last night. Shout out to Michael and Natalie Hunter. They are over at personalbrand.com. They had a great dinner last night. Saw some old friends, met some new friends. It was a ton of fun, but thanks for understanding. Your boy had to travel a little bit and be sociable, and it was good. It was fun. It's good for me. Anyways, so that's what was happening this morning. Your boy's back in the seat. And of course, membos will be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. my time, 12 noon Eastern time for our members only stream. YouTube membos, locals membos. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And of course, on Saturday. And also check out watcherlodge.com if you want to check out what we're building over there. There's chats, memes, research files, and more fun stuff. All right. So that's what's cooking out there. Now let's get into this one from Texas, because this judge has basically lost his mind. Judge Fernando Rodriguez Jr. now appointing the ACLU to represent illegal gangbang and Tren de Aragua individuals who should be deported out of our country. We've got several orders that are coming out of Texas. This one's pretty surprising. And this dude is a Trump appointee. So you're going to hear a lot of that in the headlines. A Trump appointee is now undermining President Trump and attacking his own unconstitutionality, blah, 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 right? It's covered because he's a red conservative type of judge. But you'll just read through this order, and in particular, this final paragraph where it says that this judge, Rodriguez, is ordering that Lee Gallant of the ACLU is appointed lead counsel for a class action of gang members who have been subjected to the Alien Enemies Act proclamation and ordered to be deported, now have ACLU appointed lawyers. And all ACLU attorneys who have appeared in this matter are also co-counsel for the certified class. It's wild times. So just to be clear, most illegal aliens don't get appointed ACLU gangbang lawyers, but the Tren de Aragua people do. So most illegals, even all the illegals that were deported under Joe Biden and Barack Obama, they didn't get appointed ACLU lawyers. Trump comes in here, and now the judge is giving people who've already been identified, as we saw in the Kilmar case, and there have been judicial findings on this, when they say, well, no judge has found he's MS-13. Yes, they did. They wrote it in multiple orders. The appeals court listened to it and validated it and said there was no abuse of discretion or clear factual errors and validated it. It's in the judicial findings. Judges found it. You don't need to have another trial on that to determine whether he's MS-13 or have a jury and a whole presentation about it. It's been determined. He's an illegal immigrant. He's not a citizen in our country. He doesn't get access to Article 3 courts like every other illegal before him. Doesn't get access to the Article 3 courts unless they file a petition for habeas, which we'll talk about later. But this dude now is being appointed not only for illegals, but for Tren de Aragua terroristic illegals, like the worst of the worst of the worst. They got ACLU lawyers appointed to them. Now, this came from this guy, Judge Fernando Rodriguez. He's out of Texas. He came from Yale, typical. And for a while, he was working with the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Texas. He was ultimately appointed by Trump, saying Trump nominated him in 2017. He was elevated to the position in the Southern District of Texas, had a hearing, voted 94-1, confirmed 96-0. And he's also on a list of Hispanic and Latino American jurists. And so the obvious thing that people will point out there is to say, well, he's a Hispanic Latino person. And it sounds like this ruling is very, very favorable to a group of people who are also of that same persuasion, right? Kind of hard not to notice that. Call me a bigot, xenophobic, whatever, but got to notice that. And you see that is happening in this case, right? So that is Fernando Rodriguez. Now, we have 3 orders that came down from him. And here is what they look like. And he kind of broke them up into different filings. And so the first one that I just wanted to share with you was where we kind of finished at the end, and we'll rewind here. But he's certifying a class action of these people. So the original lawsuit was JAV and just a few other people who sued. So, example, JAV, JGG, and WGH. Okay, these are initials for gangbangers, according to the Trump administration, who's identified them. And just like we saw, they don't need to have new trials for these people. It's already been found. As in the Kilmar case, there are PDFs at the Watcher Lodge in the research section. You can read them all there. It says, oh, MS-13. Then they reference the police reports and the gang identification field sheets and all the things. It's already been found. It's done. But if they want to challenge it, they can file a petition for habeas in federal court. So these 3 are under that category, right? And now they say that Trump is attempting to remove them out of here under the Alien Enemies Act that was invoked to get rid of Tren de Aragua people, where there's already been adjudications on this. Saying simultaneous to this, okay, they filed a habeas action. They also are trying to certify a class. And the Trump administration has always been in favor of, and they've always been allowed to file this petition. They never wanted to do that because they're filing them as pseudo-constitutional claims to get the class actions and to get nationwide injunctions when they file these in front of Judge Boasberg or in front of Judge Zenas or in front of Judge Amy Berman Jackson, or pick any of them. But here they go to this judge and now they want to certify an entire class. He says, yep, it's appropriate to do that. I think it's appropriate. So they're all going to be certified as a class, right? And I'll just show you the outline on this because there's 2 other co-documents and co-orders that he dropped with us, saying that petitioners are asking the court, the ACLU, to certify a class. And Trump says you can't do that. There's no basis to certify a class and to undermine the power that Trump has to articulate who has invaded our country. They say the Fifth Circuit and the Supreme Court have never explicitly ruled that class actions are a proper mechanism in habeas corpus actions, right? So if you're challenging your removal, your right to be removed, the Supreme Court has never said you can apply that to everybody, but they're doing it for the first time now because with Trump, everything's brand new. They just shatter precedents like arresting him or rather invading his house and his wife's closet. But that said, the Supreme Court has reviewed cases and saying they haven't said that we can't do it. Okay, other circuits have addressed this. So can I certify a class of gangbangers? Well, the Supreme Court hasn't said we can't. In 1974, the Second Circuit was talking about this. In this other case, the Seventh Circuit was talking about this, and blah, blah, blah. So in response to this, we're going to go ahead and find that they are a class. There's commonality. They're all gangbangers. And the present matter raises many questions of law, blah, blah, blah. So this is a class action order right now. At the end of the order, he says, boom, we're going to find that they are a class. Here's the official class. Here's the bucket of these people. It's going to be Venezuelan aliens, 14 years or older, who have not been naturalized, who Trump has designated or in the future designates as an alien enemy under the presidential proclamation, who are detained or reside in the Southern District of Texas. Okay, so it's limited, cabined to this only this one district. It's not nationwide because the judge is saying, well, I don't have nationwide jurisdiction. So at least there's that. But he's still issuing a class action for gangbangers in that district. Okay, so, and this I think is largely procedurally, operationally, how it works is, the agencies, law enforcement are rounding these people up, sending them to Texas. So if you get a district, like if you get the Southern District of Texas, that encompasses the facility where they're being housed and processed. So it's like, oh, okay. So that's a key victory, right? A lot of the response has been, oh, well, this is great news. Then the ACLU is going to have to go and file in all 94, 93 districts. And that's going to take a lot of work. And there's different judges and they may not get them all, blah, blah, blah. And you think, okay, that's probably true if you want a truly nationwide under the standard, but simultaneously, practically, you just need to hit where the deportation centers are. Just file there, find a judge there, just keep filing until you get a judge, draw a judge who does this. And then practically, you got them limited, or you play a cat and mouse game where they got to pick them up, move them out, move everybody out of this district. And they should be doing that, right? I mean, they should, okay, everybody's moved unless this judge said somewhere they can't be moved. But moving forward, right? These people, in other words, should not be moved. But new people, they're definitely not going to the Southern District of Texas. You now then move them to a different location or create some facilities. You know what they could do? Just put them under the Haitian bridge. That's not a bad idea. Under that bridge in Texas, just move them right over there. Just kind of push them across the line because they were there for years under the last administration. Apparently that was due process. That was good enough for them, crapping in the river and just, dumping crap all over the America. That was perfectly good quality for them during the last administration. So we can just do that same thing. Just dump them right off of the back of a parked semi truck or whatever, however you want to move them, and they can just build their bridges again and just stay there for a while. So Fernando Rodriguez is saying they get lawyers. They get ACLU lawyers appointed to Tren de Aragua, and that's just the beginning of it. So here is where the rest of his order comes down. This was the 36-pager capturing a lot of attention today, saying on March 15th, 2025, Trump issued a proclamation. This is the background for his opinion appointing lawyers for gangbangers. Okay, even illegal aliens who are not Tren de Aragua don't get appointed ACLU lawyers. And so this theme we've been on, it's not due process. It's due process plus. It's double due process, baby, because they're illegal and they're now better than you. You don't even get that much protection. Do you get ACLU lawyers appointed for you? Anything that you've ever done in your whole life as a judge come out and said the ACLU is going to protect you when that cop did that thing that was bad to you? Or when you were a J6er and your house was raided by lunatic feds? No. Or when you're a parent showing up at school board meetings and the FBI was surveilling you? Where was the ACLU for that? Nowhere. Because they're basically foreign operatives at this point. Says Trump issued a proclamation invoking the Alien Enemies Act to get rid of these monsters out of our country. Now, under the authority of the AEA, the president proclaimed that all gangbangers gotta go. So these three petitioners are natives of Venezuela. Okay, they're currently detained in Texas. They bring this action under U.S. code at saying, we have been denied our due process rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. It's a habeas petition. Now, they say that Trump can invoke the AEA under the alleged circumstances. Well, first of all, they say he can't do that, right? Can't even invoke the AEA because Tren de Aragua doesn't qualify as a category that's covered under the statute. And also, they say, we're not even Tren de Aragua. So the statute can't apply to us, and we're not gangbangers anyways. So they bring this suit individually and as a class action in Texas, same judge. Neither the court nor the parties question the executive authority or the responsibility to enforce the laws, right? So here's this big paragraph. Nobody's challenging Trump. Nobody is saying that they can't follow the laws. But the question this lawsuit presents is whether the president can use the AEA to remove these people who are members of TDA. And as to that question, the historical record renders clear that the invocation of the AEA in the proclamation exceeds the scope of the statute. We called this out months ago, saying this was going to be their best. I think it's their best argument, but we'll see what happens, because I think you can layer that on. Like, they can make this argument, but that would negate the entire terroristic, essentially, line of case law, right? So the idea is, no, Alien Enemies Act can only be invoked for nation states and governments. Like, it's for Britain in the War of 1812, or it's for the Germans and the Japanese in World War II. It's specific named opponents. But then you've got all this case law on terrorism where you don't have any real identified named opponents other than Al Qaeda and ISIS and Osama bin Laden and all these things, right? That are not nation states, but that the entire U.S. security state has wrapped themselves up into pretzels to justify mostly violations of our constitutional rights by saying we need to be spied on and all the things, right? So if it's in service of Al Qaeda, it's allowed, but if we're in service of Tren de Aragua, it's not allowed? That seems strange. So how is the security state going to allow that to happen? And the Supreme Court, by the way, is beholden to a lot of the same security state, right? They write stuff that supports that in a long list of cases. Now, as a result, the court concludes as a matter of law that Trump's proclamation is unlawful. He cannot rely on the Alien Enemies Act to detain these people or to remove them from the country. Now, they're going to give us some background on here. Here's what the judge says. 1798, there was a war with France. They talked about the AEA. Oh, AEA was at the center of the lawsuit, right? We've read it here before. Predatory incursion, invasion. But what they'll say is it's about foreign nations, right? And even in Trump's proclamation, he made the argument that Tren de Aragua was essentially an extension of the Maduro regime in Venezuela, and that therefore they are an extension of the nation state, right? So the AEA grants broad powers, and once properly invoked, Trump can do certain things. Now, before this year, they say 3 wars is where this has been invoked. War of 1812, right? As we mentioned before, the British and the Irish. More than a century later, World War I, Woodrow Wilson invoked it, and then FDR. Now, let's see if he talks about how this was used. Yeah, he made a public proclamation saying enemy of Japan. Yeah, and that history is a lot more complicated than that little paragraph here. Yeah, here we go. In 1945, after the Axis powers in Europe had unconditionally surrendered, Truman issued an amended proclamation that permitted the removal of Japanese, German, Italian, Bulgarian, Hungarian, Romanians, that anybody the Attorney General deemed to be dangerous and to be the subject to threats and safety, right? And so, yes, FDR used the Alien Enemies Act expansively, massively. He used it to imprison our own citizens, for crying out loud. So for us to say now, or for the left to say now, that Trump can't act under the similar powers to get rid of illegal aliens who have no right to be here in the first place, who have indicia of criminality, that he can't have that same power. Now, you'll also see, right, you'll also hear the Supreme Court repudiated a lot of that case law, or the prior holdings, like the Korematsu case, which was the justification of the Japanese internment, who were citizens, and repudiated that. But we haven't had a real clean break on that. And honestly, I think that John Roberts, like, he could really disappoint us on this case. Like, I'm just saying that. He could say, well, yeah, it's clear, it has to be for nation states. But many of these other nation states, and my World War II history might be rusty on it, but do we officially declare war on Hungary, for example, and Romania? There's the Axis allies, and so I don't know if you would say, okay, that was an enemy combatant such that they fall within the nation state definition, or are they a non-enemy combatant? That would be just kind of shoehorned in because of their Axis proclivities, let's say. So anyways, so we could see, right, and I could see John Roberts, just to put a pin on that, using this case to make a clear break in the Korematsu case and to say no, and to use this case as justification to repudiate the internment of the Japanese, right? I don't know why I think that, but he'd almost get some glory out of it, to say Trump is kind of like FDR in interning the Japanese. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I don't know. I feel something weird in my bones. All right, Venezuela and Tren de Aragua. They say, okay, here we go. In 2011, Barack Obama issued an executive order to block property ownership by transnational organizations. He used Code of Federal Regulations. The Treasury Department also designated this. Yeah, and also Obama, it's interesting. Obama also took out that one American citizen called Al-Aliki, I think was his name. And there was no due process for that dude either. They just kind of talked about that. No judge, in other words, signed off on a death sentence for that person. And they like targeted him. It wasn't like, oh, accidentally, it was a mistake of war. Like, oh, no, we're going to go take that dude out, and just took him out. So was that allowed under any of this? Like, is he going to talk about that in due process? Was that under the Alien Enemies Act? I don't know what authority that was. But Obama declared that these people were dangerous. The Treasury Department went after this dude. In July 2024, Tren de Aragua was placed on a sanctions list. In 2024, Interpol captured another high-ranking member of TDA. These are bad dudes. So then in March, Trump issued the proclamation, right, saying Tren de Aragua infiltrated the Maduro regime and the Venezuelan presidency, essentially. And so therefore, I declare that they are perpetrating a predatory incursion and an invasion of America. Now, let's take a look at these petitioners, who are probably just makeup artists from San Francisco here for a better life. So this person called Jav is a Venezuelan national. February 2025, not long ago, he was arrested at his asylum interview, because that's what they all claim. I'm here claiming asylum. No. When questioned, he denied membership at TDA. ICE initially detained this person in Venezuela, and then, like I suspected earlier, sent him over to Texas, which is why this order is big, right? They round him up, send him there. Then he was informed he would be removed within the next 2 days, 48 hours. That's plenty of notice. So then this other person, JGG, he said he came in, he has to escape torture in Venezuela. I know, lots of tortures. I don't know if he had a pupusa business down there either, like Kilmar's pupusa business, which he was under torture for there, as we recall. So he was so heroic and such a brave person, he fled his family who was under attack to come up here and beat his wife. On March 6th, he was transferred from California to El Valle in Texas. And then the respondents attempted to remove him, but the plane did not depart. So that might be the same JGG in the Boasberg case. Then we got this other Venezuelan national who lived in Brooklyn with his wife and stepdaughter. ICE arrested him. March 7th, filed a form with the immigration court identifying him as a gang associate. Then 3 days later, he was transferred. They said, you're also out of here March 15th or 16th. So bye. So then they sued. So the petitioners, along with 2 other people, sued. They sued in Washington, D.C., because that's where their home field advantage is. They could sue in Texas. They could have sued in Texas from the beginning, in part under the APA, which is a fake claim. After the court issued a TRO, that was Boasberg, the respondents appealed and the matter reached the nation's high court. Yeah, so Boasberg, right, didn't have jurisdiction on this, so they're kind of still processing it over here. On April 7th, the Supreme Court temporarily resolved Boasberg's crap TRO that was illegal, where he ordered Trump to turn the planes around. That was that judge, reasoning that the petitioner's claims for relief necessarily imply the invalidity of their confinement, and you got to bring it in habeas, right, in Texas. Now, on April 9th, then they filed their writ of habeas corpus in Texas, which is what they should have done in the beginning. They challenged their ability to remove them, and they say, we're not members of Tren de Aragua, and you can't invoke it against us anyways. The court extended the temporary restraining order, saying you're not going to remove these specific people, and we had a bunch of hearings. We notified the parties that we're going to have hearings on May 1st, 2025, which is today. The court granted the class certification. We just read that in the previous filing. Certified a whole class of gangbangers, gave them ACLU lawyers too, and gave us the explanation for that, which is outstanding. So they get more representation than you would if you were charged with a crime. Probably. You might get a public defender. Probably have to contribute to that. They would do a financial assessment on you, and they would say, well, you're kind of indigent, so we can't really, make you pay for your own attorney. They're not going to appoint you an ACL lawyer. You're going to have to contribute something to that. And you'll get your contract public defender is probably a really nice person and a great attorney. But it's a little bit more strict for you. You got to qualify for it. Otherwise, you're coming out of pocket to pay for your criminal defense attorney. But the illegal gangbangers, ACLU lawyers appointed right to them. Whether they want them or not, whether they were seeking them or not, you're part of a class, you get a lawyer. More rights than you. It's part of a humiliation ritual, just to be clear what's happening here. Now, analysis, but use it as fuel, okay? Use it as fuel. Now, analysis, they say that these gangbangers are now seeking relief by challenging Trump's proclamation, saying, we're not doing a predatory incursion in your country. It's hilarious. So like, this is not a predatory invasion. We're like, where are you seated right now? Are you in America? Yeah. Are you allowed to be here? No. Did anybody invite you in here? No. Did you come here lawfully? No. Did you apply for asylum when you got here? No. Did you come in at a port of entry? No. Did you register? No. Well, what the hell is that? If not a predatory incursion, you're here illegally. It's by definition, you're part of the lawsuit. Suing in our courts, inside the country. You've incurred, okay? You've invaded. You're here. Says, and third, petitioners claim that the proclamation violates specific protections that Congress has established for non-citizens seeking humanitarian protection. I know, because their little pupusas are getting obliterated down there in their home countries. And the point is, they should stay in their home countries and fix the pupusa attacks that are happening there. Okay, we can't be your little pupusa escape valve here. Respondents contest the validity, and so they're going to say, here's the question. First of all, what's the appropriate standard? Well, they're bringing their actions in habeas, and they're not seeking release of detention. They just don't want to be removed to those other countries. Now, Trump says, first of all, you can't even challenge this, judge. Are you nuts? The statutes say You can't challenge this. It's not ripe or proper for judicial scrutiny. How dare you substitute your judgment for mine? I'm the president. The American people elected me to sit in this position, to hear from all my cabinet members, to hear from Homeland, to hear from DOJ, FBI, Cash, and the rest of everybody else, to get my bearing straight on what's happening. And I've been empowered to make decisions based on that information. That's how the system works. So for you, Judge, to come in here and to say, actually, the Tren de Aragua is not a gangbanging organization that's connected to Maduro. You don't get to make that judgment by statute. Repeatedly, this judge is mad. They claim, Judge Rodriguez, obviously, whether the AEA's preconditions are satisfied is a political question committed to the president's discretion. In both instances, they rely on substantive case law describing the broad powers that Trump has as president. Now, they respond, the other gangbangers, they say, Your Honor, kind of. Like, it is kind of a political question. They're even admitting it. But this is a narrow exception to this, because it's not going to undermine authority, because the statute is illegal, right? Basically, how he's being used is illegal. They also say that Judge Kavanaugh had some stuff to say about this, and the Supreme Court's talked about it before. In fact, in 1827, they did something, and they rejected that. And then in this other Martin case, they rejected that. A century later, then, in World War II, the Supreme Court considered challenges concerning the Alien Enemies Act, right? We remember these cases, the Ludecky case, the Johnson case. Maybe they'll get into Korematsu up here. Let's see. Says in at least two of those cases, the nation's high court recognized the broad powers that the AEA placed in the president. They wrote this. The Supreme Court said, the very nature of the president's power to order the removal of all alien enemies rejects the notions that courts may pass judgment upon his discretion. You can't substitute the judge and their opinion for the president's opinion. Otherwise, the judge is the president. Writing, executive power over enemy aliens, undelayed, unhampered by litigation, has been deemed throughout our history essential to wartime security. Now, in those decisions, the Supreme Court also identified issues related to this that are subject to adjudication. They say you could go to the court, you could ask about interpretation and constitutionality, right? So the judge is then going to come back and say, okay, what I can, even though you said I can't, I can if it relates to these things. Okay, so these are the things that I can talk about. Whether there's a commitment to another coordinate political department, lack of judicially discoverable standards, and other things, right? These are other things that are not actually political questions, that are not me substituting my judgment by law. There are a couple areas that I can't go into, but in these areas I can. Now, the Supreme Court said in the Boasberg case, but the other person who was on the airplane that was told to be turned around, or he was not actually on it, but the plane was told to be turned around because that judge certified a class there, says this role is not surprising, and writing, many others have construed the AEA, and there are questions about what does native or citizen mean, and there's other questions about what invasion and predatory incursion means. And so the judge is giving us a lot of, you see all this is like case law. It's kind of why we're fast forwarding through it. Lots of quotes and saying, well, this case says this, and this case says this, and this case says this. That's great. We want to see what the conclusion is that the judge is coming to, saying, now, as a corollary, right, in kind of the opposite of a lot of that, or in complement to that, the corollary is that the court concludes that a presidential declaration invoking the AEA must include sufficient factual statements. So you got to prove it to me that it's good enough, or I'm not going to accept your homework. This isn't really alien enemies, because you got to enable a court to determine whether you can invoke the statute. So it's got to be factual enough that I get to approve your action as the president of the United States. It's like such a wild shifting of the balance of power. You got to make sure you can do it. It's approval. Congress wrote in the statutes, not subject to your judicial review, saying the president cannot summarily declare that a foreign nation or government has threatened or perpetrated an invasion or predatory incursion, followed by the identification of the aliens subject to detention or removal. This is the Fifth Circuit in 2024 from another case. So saying if you just allow him to unilaterally define the conditions, then it would remove all limitations. It would strip the courts of their traditional role of interpreting these things. So of course, if he says it's this, then we can check it. Now, the court is mindful that Trump may possess sensitive and confidential information, obviously, leading to its conclusion that a foreign nation or government is attempting a predatory incursion. But this possibility does not require the conclusion that the AEA is an exception, that we can say whether you've exceeded the scope of a law. So we can, of course, do that, says the judge. And while the president's declaration invoking the AEA doesn't need to disclose everything, it does need to sufficiently identify information that would allow us to review your homework so we can determine whether there is an incursion or not. Now, having concluded that I can hear this, I'm going to turn to what I'm allowed to question you about. Now, the ACLU gangbangers lawyers say, you're not giving the gangbangers enough notice and due process, not enough. And so basically notice is a component of due process. Do you have notice to appear? That is a component of due process. So people will say, there's essentially a debate happening right now. Should the illegals get due process? And it's kind of a misnomer of a debate because they already are getting due process. Getting notice of something is a component of due process. It's like you can't properly defend yourself if you don't know that the charges are out there against you. And this used to happen all the time. You just be like driving down the road, get arrested. Oh, got a warrant out for your arrest. What? Like I'm in England, like in 1860 or like 1660s or whatever. Yeah, you're under arrest. What? I didn't know. Too bad. They just issued it this morning, and now you're going to jail or whatever. And warrants are different, but notice of charges or even a notice to appear. Like in some cases, you can think about this like if you get a traffic ticket and you get flashed by a camera, for example, and they don't send you a copy of the ticket and they just suspend your license and they just do it all without you even knowing anything about it. They send you the ticket so you have notice so that you can challenge it and invoke the process to contest the allegations. If you don't have notice, they just do it, issue a fine and suspend your license and all those things. That's a violation of due process. So by getting a notice by the illegals saying, oh, you're getting deported here, that's notice, that's due process. Then they can challenge it. So these are all little, degrees of process, but they're getting due process. And Kilmar got a ton of it. All these illegals are too. Respondents emphasize that the notice and the challenges are moot. They say we're not going to move these people out of here anyways. But he says, but not about the class, right? So Trump says we're not deporting these people. They got notice. They filed their habeas. We're not going to move them. But the judge says, I, Judge Rodriguez, am going to make sure that the rest of the illegals also stay in the country. And as they note, we're going to read this broadly. And finally, the court says, neither the AEA nor due process requires that they afford them an opportunity to voluntarily depart either. So they then challenge the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. So the gangbanger lawyers are coming here saying, we're just going to interpret the statute and read it on its face to see what it means. What does the statute say? So the judge is going to look to multiple definitions, going to go to dictionaries, essentially, multiple dictionary meanings. The historical context is relevant, but doesn't dictate the word's meaning. So I'm just going to look to the definition. He says, to apply the principle of looking at definitions, let's look at the words. Now, the proclamation invokes the AEA by saying Tren de Aragua is perpetrating or causing an invasion or predatory incursion. And they say that's all we need. We've invoked it. In support of this reading, they say, the gangbangers, that no president has invoked the AEA other than during a time of war, right? So it's got to be in a declared conflict. 1812, World War I, World War II. Now, based on their proposed construction, they say that Tren de Aragua in Venezuela, it can't be that because we're not in a declared war. But Trump says we got to read that much more broadly. And this is where that terrorism case law comes into play, right? We're kind of in a declared war on terrorism. That's an amorphous term. How do you ever defeat that? What is a predatory incursion? What is a hostile entrance? They say it's much broader. But there are numerous sources, so they're going to battle over this. So they're going to cite Webster's dictionary. Okay, not joking. Johnson's here. They're going to say this is what this means, and so on and so forth. The judge is going to come to the conclusion that the statute and Trump's proclamation don't match. We located only one historical record from the debates over the AEA. They say Robert Harper moved to strike the phrase predatory incursion because he thought it was too expansive and too much power for the executive branch. And the Constitution itself also references invasion. And so we're trying to figure out what these words mean. But here, while the court finds that an invasion or predatory incursion must involve an organized armed force entering the United States to engage in conduct, the action does not need to be a precursor to actual war in order to qualify. So he's going to find that invasion or predatory incursion, it sounds like that element might pass. So he'll just kick it out on this next one. So then Trump says, the gangbangers say, well, maybe there's an incursion by Tren de Aragua, but it's not an incursion by a foreign nation. It's not an incursion by a foreign government. And Alien Enemies Act only says nation or government. Now, in advancing that argument, they say it's got to be something that has a territory or legal authority, and Tren de Aragua does not. Trump says, no way, it's more broad than that. Government is power or authority. Now, neither party claims that foreign nation or government excludes recognized countries like the US or Venezuela, and thus, for reasons explained in the next section, we don't need to resolve this. It's unnecessary to resolve the issues in this lawsuit. Okay, so that's a little surprising to me. I thought that's where he would have kicked it out. So instead, he says, having determined that we don't know the meanings, the court considers whether, as a matter of law, it exceeds the bounds of the statutory boundaries that the AEA establishes. The court says, yes, you did. So the proclamation is illegal because it's outside of the statutory requirements. Here's why. The court finds the proclamation places the government as Venezuela over the controlling entity over TDA. According to the proclamation, Maduro is involved in it too. And Maduro, who claims to act as Venezuela's president, leads the regime, which coordinates and relies on Tren to carry this out. Now, although the proclamation from Trump focuses on their activities, it places control of those activities in Maduro, acting in his claim role as president. In other words, it says Venezuela, through Maduro, directs Tren. And they accurately characterize the proclamation message, saying it's essentially Tren is indistinguishable from Venezuela, the state. Now, as a result, the court concludes the proclamation places responsibilities for Tren's actions on the Venezuelan government, which satisfies this. Now, as for the activities in the United States, the court concludes that they do not fall within the plain, ordinary meaning of invasion or predatory incursion under the AEA. So he says, in other words, in Venezuela, they're gangbangers down there. But in the United States, it's not necessarily an invasion or predatory incursion. Here's why. Now, no question, the proclamation references Tren coming in, saying they've unlawfully infiltrated. He says, yep, they're here. And these members include harming the United States. Got that too. Okay. And in addition, it also references the decision of the agency during Joe Biden to designate TDA as a transnational criminal organization and ongoing criminal activity and more. But those factual statements depict conduct by Tren that unambiguously is harmful to the society in this country. But he's going to keep them here. Okay, let's see. And as previously explained, the political question doctrine prohibits the court from weighing the truth of those factual statements, including whether Maduro is taking action. Instead, the court determines whether the statements taken as true are actually an invasion. And based on the plain reading, this court concludes that those factual statements do not. Wild. So Trump's written proclamation just doesn't allege enough facts to show an invasion. He says the proclamation makes no reference to and in no matter suggests a threat exists of an organized armed group of individuals entering the United States at the direction to conquer the country or to assume control over a portion of the nation. Wild. Did he forget about what happened in Colorado, where they took over apartment buildings? I wonder if he brings that up in here. Says, thus the proclamation's language cannot be read as describing conduct that falls within an invasion. So they're just like here on vacation. As a predatory incursion, the proclamation does not describe an armed group of individuals entering with a purpose to attack. While the proclamation does say that they've harmed lives, it doesn't suggest that they've done so in an organized attack. So this judge is dunking this on the form of the proclamation. Are you joking me? He's like, you just didn't write it good enough. Like you didn't satisfy my rubric. For these reasons, The court concludes the president's invocation exceeds the scope of the statute and therefore is unlawful. You don't have the lawful authority to do what you've done. And so here the judge finds, in conclusion, they're certified class action. They've demonstrated relief in habeas, and Trump cannot remove these people. Permanent injunction prohibiting Trump from employing the proclamation against any of these people. The certified class warrants similar protection. The court will issue a final judgment, and to the extent that anybody has been detained and they have not sought and do not obtain any relief, they say, in addition, the conclusions of the court do not affect Trump's ability to continue removal proceedings under the INA. Okay, so in other words, you can still deport people, but you just can't use the Alien Enemies Act to do that. Yeah, in other words, these people can still be removed under the INA if there's validity to do that, because they're not seeking relief under the INA. But under the Alien Enemies Act, they cannot be removed. So signed by Judge Fernando Rodriguez Jr., the same judge who's given them ACLU lawyers and making sure they cannot be ordered out. Here's the final order. It says, all right, here, the class petition for the writ of habeas corpus is granted. Okay, so not only the 3 people who filed, okay, Trump says, everybody's gangbangers, you're all going out. A couple people say, nope, you got me wrong. I'm not. I'm going to file my petition. Trump says, oh, great. Judge says, since you filed your petition, now everybody gets to stay. And they all get the same writ of habeas corpus. So you cannot remove them under the Alien Enemies Act, saying, now Trump is permanently enjoined from removing them or anybody in this district based on the Alien Enemies Act. The permanent injunction does not stop them from removing other people under the Immigration and Nationality Act. You just can't remove them under the AEA. So they're going to be hitting that hard. You better believe this, baby. They're going to just double time those cases. This final judgment and permanent injunction does not enjoin Trump in his official duties as president of the United States, because you can't do that. That's why this judge squeezed that little thing in there. And it's like, all right, Trump should just go down and just approve every single deportation. Just load them onto buses one after another. You're on the plane, get on the airplane, fly it himself. Choo choo, you're going home. All aboard the Trump train. And Fernando Rodriguez Jr., the judge out of Texas, is the judge who signed off on that. Now, as I mentioned, the judge is appointing the ACLU lawyer, Lee Gallant, the same judge who called in to another Texas judge and got scolded for it. You remember, this judge posted the transcript of Lee Gallant, the ACLU gangbang lawyer, calling and screaming at the judge, basically. We'd like to talk to the judge immediately. Have the judge issue an order. Have him not move. Judge understands. Like going nuts. And the judge scolded him for that, right? Issued that whole filing. Now he's going to be the same attorney who's doing unethical things in this courtroom, now palling around with Judge Rodriguez over there in Texas. Now, Stephen Miller came out today over at the White House. He was unhappy with what we're seeing in the media and in the courts. And here's what he was explaining to the folks in the press briefing room today.
A sad reflection on the state of our media and many of the outlets represented in this room, that you obsessively try to shill for this MS-13 terrorist. Well, no coverage occurred in your papers about any of the Americans that were raped and tortured and murdered by the illegals that Biden was importing into our country. You know, you talk about due process. The Biden administration made the decision to give extensive due process to 2 trained Nicaragua terrorists that were apprehended at the border just a couple years ago. They were 2 gentlemen. They were from Venezuela. They were members of Trained Nicaragua. The Biden administration Border Patrol apprehended them and made the decision to provide them with extensive due process, put them onto a program known as supervised release, and put them on ankle monitors so that they could go through a lengthy legal judicial determination as to whether these legal aliens who had just set foot on U.S. soil might want to live in the United States for the rest of their lives. What was the result of that decision? What was the result of that choice that was made? Those 2 men kidnapped a young girl named Jocelyn Ungary from her family. They beat her, they sexually assaulted her, they tortured her, they stripped her, they murdered her, and they dumped her body. That is what the Biden administration's policy was. Most of your papers never covered her story when it happened. To the extent that you covered it at all, it was because President Trump forced you to cover it by highlighting it repeatedly over and over again. He had to shame you into covering it. And each and every one of you that sides over and over again with these MS-13 terrorists, to the extent that you have the financial means to do so, you all choose to live in condos or homes or houses as far away from these kinds of gangbangers as you possibly can. If I offered any one of you a rent-free home with no taxes to pay in any of these gang neighborhoods, and I said your neighbors are MS-13 terrorists or Mexican mafia or Sinaloa cartel or Tren de Aragua, I couldn't pay you to live there. But yet you, with your coverage, are trying to force innocent Americans to have these people as their neighbors, and that one day their daughter may be abducted from their home and raped and murdered. So you're not going to get an ounce of sympathy from this administration or President Trump for the terrorists who've invaded our homes and our country.
Yeah, and I couldn't appreciate that more, because this is just an appeal to emotion. I mean, it's a factual thing that's happening in our country where we're having innocent Americans getting attacked and abused. Even in the Kilmar case, right? He's beating his own wife, according to her, not me, twice in 2 different order of protection filings that she submitted to the courts in her own handwriting. Okay. So every time they come out and they lecture our side about, you deported a 2-year-old with kids, sir. How could you? Smack them back in the face, rhetorically speaking, with their own damages that they've caused to our brothers and sisters, our mothers and daughters, our friends and family all around us. And you may know people, right, who've had something bad happen to them as a result of the lawlessness in our streets. And so it is very refreshing to hear Stephen come back out and explain this to the media and remind them about what is actually happening. And if they want to appeal to authority all night, we can do the same thing, because the damage is reprehensible and it forces them to then backpedal into defending the gangbangers. And they're doubling down on it. Stephen Miller, I hope, keeps it up. We know he will. Shout out to the White House crew for laying it on thick to the media today. They deserved every bit of it. We'll see what the Trump administration does next with this case in Texas, whether they appeal it up or try something else. Whatever happens, we'll be here covering it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now we're not done yet. Let's talk a little Kilmar action, because we got some new documents on this one over from the Maryland case. Here we are. The Maryland man, the so-called, what's his name? What do they call him? Barber? He's not the barber. The Maryland man, also known here as Kilmar wife beater, human trafficking, MS-13 gangbanging Abrego Garcia, is in deeper trouble. We've got new documents that were released courtesy of Bill Malugin over at Fox News. He posted this. The scoop came originally from Cameron Arcand, and they got that second order of protection against Kilmar. The first one we read through here was pretty gruesome, saying that he ripped her clothes off, hit her in the eye, screaming, racing off in the car, kids crying and screaming in the back, and all sorts of things. This is case number 2. This is the same Kilmar that Senator Van Hollen went down to El Salvador to share margaritas with this guy and to protect his so-called due process rights, even though he's had plenty of due process rights. I would argue more due process than most illegal aliens ever got, even under Joe Biden or under Barack Obama. But now we see this other document that has emerged. And for some reason, the Democrats have made this dude their number one cause du jour of the moment. Kilmar Armado Abrego Garcia, wife beater, MS-13 human trafficker, says here, I am Jennifer Vasquez, submitting this in Maryland versus Kilmar, writing that I am the current spouse of the respondent, and I am a person related to the respondent by marriage, and I'm filing this as an individual who has a child in common with Kilmar. I'm also an individual who has made pupusas with the respondent within 1 year of filing the petition. Now, I want relief for myself and my minor child because of the abuse from Kilmar wife-beater Abrego, telling us the respondent whose present whereabouts are known are, we don't know, dude's gone. But he committed the following acts of abuse against Jennifer Vasquez on or about, we got 2 different dates, 6/30/2020 and 7/25/2020. So almost 2 months apart. And look what happened. Kicking, slapping, shoving, mental injury of a child, detainment against a will, and verbal abuse. So we've got 2 different dates on or about. We've got slaps, physical hits, according to her, shoving, mentally injuring a child, and essentially kidnapping, right? Detaining somebody against their will. Other verbal abuse as well. What a nice guy. What a loving husband. She said he's a loving husband. Now, here's what she writes in the specific details. Today, August 3rd, 2020, my husband took my phone around 1 a.m. in the morning. And in the morning, he wanted to take my car, but I told him I was going to go out with my kids. My kids. Not our kids. My kids. He then got angry. I went upstairs to make food for my kids. But he turned off the stove. And it's interesting because we've talked about this before, and we think, oh, that's interesting. Like, did they just get married to kind of facilitate an immigration thing? And then they would say, well, he's got 3 kids. And I made the note, well, it's kind of 2. Well, I got 1. The 2 were not really from him. And then when he was getting deported, they got married, and I think she was getting pregnant, like, at the same time. So it's kind of one of those things. Like, huh, that's weird. And then, of course, the response was, Rob, don't you know? You can have your stepfathers or stepparents can be like the original kids. 100%. Shout out to my stepfather, my father, Greg. One and the same, baby. I totally understand it. But I don't think my stepfather would say, like, he would exclude me from that. Like, he wouldn't go like, I'm going to take my kids. Like, I'm pretty sure my stepdad would say our kids, like Rob's my son, right? You know what I mean? And I'd say, yeah, he's my father. I'm not going to say like, hey, I'm going to take like, it'd be like in reverse. I'm going to take my parents to dinner, and I'm going to take my mom, but I'm leaving Greg at home. Sorry, Greg. I'm taking my parents with me, right? It's like ridiculous. Shout out to Greg. Hope you're watching. But the point is, my kids, it feels like there's a little bit of separation there, right? It feels a little bit unnatural, strange. But he turned off the stove, and you might imagine why. Like, she's like, they're my kids. Like, this dude's nuts. He's getting here, beating the hell out of me, stealing my phone, threatening me at 1 a.m, saying I can't take my kids out. I'm gonna go make food for my kids, right? Maybe she's under like abuse from MS-13. Now she's got the ACLU who's exploiting her. You might almost feel sorry for her a little bit, maybe. Says here, now vulnerable kids got my. At this time, the victim can be found at my dad's. Baby is with Kilmar Abrego. So maybe his baby, right? So it's like they're separating. So he's going to take his kid. She's going to take their kids. Kids' names, Xavier, Dalieza, and Kilmar, I think. Yeah, Kilmar's the son. So we got another junior coming in the house. Oh, perfect. Great. So here's what they says. Okay, says, baby is with Kilmar Abrego and told me I wasn't going to cook anything for him until I gave him my key. She said, I'm just cooking some food. Would you like some food? No, not until I get your car key. So then Jennifer says, I try to go back to the basement, and he had locked 2 of my kids in the room, kidnapping, locked 2 of my kids in the room, and the baby was sleeping in the crib. I could hear them crying. I looked for help, but no one was home. I then went to the car and found a phone. I was able to call 911. I wonder if that is recorded somewhere. I tried to return inside, but he locked all the doors. After 5 minutes waiting for the police, taking their sweet time, like, oh, it's an illegal abusing kids. Okay, well, shift's about to change, so can you wait a little bit? Okay, actually, you know what? We're not going to come. We'll see you later. Says and he opened the door. So then Kilmar comes, opens the door, and told me to give him the keys. Give me the keys. I'll let you inside. I said, I try to make food for my kids because I could hear my kids because I could hear them crying and screaming. These kids being abused. I told him to let me go downstairs, but he blocked the door and want to look out the window. I saw someone walking and I opened the door and I yelled for help, screaming for help from her neighbors. When my husband heard, he grabbed me back inside and slapped me. Quiet. Get in here. Then the police came and he acted violent with him. Police came and he acted violent with him and broke my phone in front of the officer. This is crazy, dude. He committed criminal damage right in front of the cop. What did the cop do? Cop's like, well, are you an illegal? He's like, yeah. He's like, all right, well. He says, this is not the first time. Obviously not, right? Like, obviously this happens all the time. This by the time a person comes, files something like this, it's probably gotten, in most cases, pretty bad. It's been a couple of occasions where he takes my phone and my car, and I'm left without being able to call anyone. And I have photos of all the bruises that he has left on my body. See that? All the bruises he's left on my body. The ACLU gangbangers, man, and the lawyers, this is who they're representing. This is who they want in their country. Why don't the Democrats care about Jennifer Vasquez? Why don't they care about her getting her body beaten in with bruises? What are they doing? In my house is broken. TVs, my son's tablet, my car's windshield, phones, walls. Me and my kids are afraid now. He kicked me. He asked me, slapped me in the face. He threatened me. I also have a recorded that he told my ex-mother-in-law that even if he eliminates me, no one can do anything to him. On video, right? Signed by Jennifer Vasquez, the same people that they're parading around all day on the internet. And they're going to tell us, like, okay, what is this? Is this like a makeup artist type of behavior? What is this? This feels like gangbanger behavior. Just come in, take whatever you want. I can kill you. No one's going to do anything to me because I'm illegal. I'm above the law. I got literal cop. This is scandalous, I think. Why did this cop, who the hell was this cop who showed up and watched this dude commit a crime right in front of him and not arrest him right then and there? That is crazy how that happened. And just allowed it to go on. That's criminal damage. That's disorderly conduct. That's domestic violence right there, destroying her phone in front of the cop. That's Jennifer saying that, not me. So why did that cop allow that to happen? Did she call the cops in other situations and they show up and they just look at him and say, oh, well, nothing to do here. Maybe it's just how it goes in Maryland. She also wrote this, says, this person, the petitioner respondent, puts the addresses. There are something redacted. Says, describe all past injuries by Kilmar, all of his beatings of you. Here, let's talk about them. November 2019, he grabbed me by the hair in the car. Get over here. December 3rd, smashing her in there. Grab me from the hair in the car again, December 3rd. So November, December, multiple beatings. He dragged me out of the car, leaving me in the street again. January 2020, he broke my son's tablet, criminal damage. Broke doors in my house, multiple assaults. March 2020, pushed me against the wall, assault, domestic violence. May 5th, broke a phone, criminal damage, and TV, and more. Dude's out of control. Democrats want him released into our country. They're insane, saying, I want the court to order him not to abuse us anymore, all the kids and her, and don't go to my residence at this address. Sick, sick times. So you might have a little empathy now after seeing that for Jennifer Vasquez, because she might still be under abuse, and the Democrats, who are constantly lecturing us about our humanity, are now exploiting a woman who's had multiple, it's 2 orders of protections, but she's gotten beaten for months and years probably. and is probably scared as hell because the dude's a gangbanger. And what's she going to do? To be honest, wild. And the Democratic Party has made this guy their number one hero of their party. And they're crying about him every single day. Bill Malugin also posted this. Here's another group of PhD scholars who tried to come into our country to get better lives. Says ICE has arrested a Mexican illegal alien convicted of first-degree murder and robbery in New York, who had a deportation order since 1999, this dude on the left, and a twice-deported Guatemalan illegal on the right, charged in Virginia with abduction by force, strangulation of a VA woman, gun charges. And guess what? ICE say they were released from local custody with their detainer ignored by the Fairfax County Sheriff's Office due to their sanctuary policy. Okay, so we have politicians in our country that are perfectly okay with this. They want more of it to happen because they hate your guts, and they're fine allowing other people to come in and humiliate you in your own country. And that's the team they're on. It's very dark and demonic forces at play here, but that's what's happening, as you can see it right here. Now, one of these people who is behind a lot of this is this woman. Now, this is pretty painful to listen to, so we're just going to listen to a short snippet, I swear. But she is crying and screeching. This is a prosecutor here. Senate Democrats posted this. This is hilarious. They said, terminated January 6th prosecutor. I think this is heroic. All the people on The View are listening to this, and they're getting out their little Kleenex boxes. At the end of the night, 15 U.S. attorneys had been fired. She's going to go on this sobbing, snobby, whining. She's lucky she's not in jail, to be honest with you. Listen to this.
Relating to the events that occurred at or near the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. An executive order issued on January 20th, 2025.
Hell yeah.
The president characterized that work as having involved a grave national injustice that has perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years.
Yep, you did that.
It went on to say that my hiring has hindered the ability of the acting U.S. Attorney Martin to staff his office in furtherance of his obligation to faithfully implement the agenda that the American people elected president.
She's so sad. So Ed Martin said, you're a hack. You have to go. I don't want you in my office anymore because you're a partisan, biased loser, and you have to go. And this is what she's doing. This shows you, I think, how unwell this person is, but not only her, the rest of the team, right? The rest of the J6 team. They're not well in the brain. Like, they're just dissembling right in front of everybody, sobbing with snot coming out of her nose in a congressional hearing because she got fired for being a partisan hack. You guys lost. You knew what game you were playing, or if you didn't know what game you were playing, then you're a moron and you shouldn't have a job for that reason either. So you're either emotionally deficient, mentally incompetent, or politically biased. Pick one. Either way, you're fired. Get out. Here, let's listen to a little bit more of this and just soak it up.
Trump to SCU. The termination letter made it clear to me that Mr. Martin does not understand the role of a prosecutor.
Shout out.
U.S. attorneys represent the United States of America, not the president. Firing 15 qualified attorneys created an immediate deficit in the office to appropriately prosecute cases.
What? Oh my gosh. So that is an actual U.S. attorney. Could you imagine having that person even in your life? I couldn't even imagine it. Fortunately, Ed Martin will not have her in his life anymore. So shout out to Ed Martin for firing her and everybody else. Ed Martin, we need him to get into power in the DC circuit. And so if you're in state with Tom Tillis or any one of these squishy Republicans, make sure you're giving them the nudge. I'm here with two blue senators, morons. But if you're in a red state senator and your senator is being squishy on Ed Martin, please help America. Tell them to support Ed Martin in the DC so he can fire more of these whiny, snobby baby prosecutors who shouldn't be anywhere near power, honestly. She's so emotionally unstable. I wouldn't put her arts and crafts, maybe, alone by herself in a corner. Arts and crafts, nothing sharp, Play-Doh, paintbrushes, and some clay. That's it. All right. Anyways, we've got more. Here is Ilhan Omar. So if you've got children, in the audience, they're going to learn how disgusting Ilhan Omar is right here, because she's going to drop 2 F-bombs to a member of the media. We had this person make a recording, I think from the Daily Wire, and Ilhan Omar tells this journo to F off, tells him to F off twice. So it's earmuffs time as we listen to this disgusting congresswoman and her disgusting potty mouth. And we don't know if she kisses her brother with that mouth or not, but here it is.
Congresswoman Omar, I'm Miles Morrell with the Daily Caller News Foundation. Do you think more of your Democratic colleagues should be traveling to El Salvador to advocate on behalf of Rodrigo Garcia?
I think you should fuck off. Yeah, that's
I'm sorry, what, Congresswoman?
fuck off.
Woo!
Who should?
You.
Why me?
We're not taking any questions right now, but here you go.
Yeah, thanks.
Are you mad, Ilhan? What's going on? Why don't you go call your brother? He can console you. You guys can rub each other's feet. But this, I think, is indicative of their scrambling efforts. They went in head over heels for Kilmar. Then they learned that he beats more people than Doug Emhoff does. And they realized, uh-oh, we got a problem here. So when they start FUing, when people start attacking you like that and they just start calling names, it means that they are scrambling out there. It's a good rule. Don't even need to really hit them back too hard. You just say, wow, why are you so upset? Why are you mad though? Why are you mad though? What's wrong? Why are you mad? So here's another one from Fox News telling us that they're grabbing more Tren de Aragua folks at the border. And this was an interesting little conversation with this individual who was saying that Tren de Aragua, once they get in your country, they spread around like a virus and they just multiply and take over. Here's what he said.
To expand not only from Venezuela, but they were also in Colombia and Peru, heavily involved in narcotics trafficking, human and sex trafficking. So the open border was more or less an invitation to TDA to let's expand into the United States. And what we saw initially were many states, especially the sanctuary cities, saying, excuse me, oh, it's not a big problem. It's only 1 or 2 people, right? Aurora, Colorado comes to mind. They played it down. Oh, it's only 4 or 5 people in a hotel.
Right.
Here we are several months later, and they're in 20 states across the country, primarily isolated or hiding in the sanctuary cities where they know they have political top cover from mayors, governors, and local constituents. So Canada is making the same mistake that Colorado or Aurora made. They're saying, oh, it's only a few people. But as we know, every virus infection starts out small. You get a cough, you get a sore throat. Next thing you know, you're in the hospital with influenza or pneumonia, and then you're on life support. And if you'd only paid attention in the very beginning and snuffed out the problem when you had an opportunity before it metastasized, you could reduce that influence. And let's look at Canada. What are we seeing in Canada? We're seeing the cartels, the Sinaloa cartel, working with domestic drug trafficking groups in Canada to set up super fentanyl laboratories, in addition to the methamphetamine laboratories that are all over Canada.
Yep. And so they're just going to continue that operation up there. Apparently the Canadians want more of a weak leadership, and we'll have to secure that northern border too. Here's Tom Homan out explaining his take on the latest with Kilmar Abrego, wife beater, MS-13 human trafficker Garcia Abrego.
I've seen in 40 years what TDA and MS-13 are capable of. I've seen the horrific things they have done, not only to American citizens, but aliens that live here. I've seen their capability. They are animals, and I can't even compare it to animals. Animals kill to survive. MS-13 and TDA kill for pleasure and to put fear in not only the American community, they put fear in the immigrant community. That's who they attack the most, the migrant community. So, you know what? I stand with President Trump. This man's home. He's where he should be.
That's right. And Kilmar Abrego is an El Salvadorian. He is in El Salvador. He beat American citizens. He had plenty of due process articulated by several different judges. He was properly departed to the right country, and he should remain. We're hopeful to see what comes next in the litigation. And when we get updates on the discovery battle in Judge Zenas' courtroom, we hope you join us to cover it, and subscribe so we don't miss you back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, we got one final update on the day. And now we're going to the Supreme Court, baby. A brilliant brief in the United States Supreme Court. This one coming from a very familiar face. You may recognize his name, John Eastman, a man who was put through the ringer by the Democrats and the lawfare state back when he was helping President Trump regain the White House. And what has happened here is his organization, called the Constitutional Counsel Group, is submitting this brief as a friend of the court in a battle about birthright citizenship. And you know that this is a consolidation of 3 cases currently in the Supreme Court of the United States, waiting for them to come down and answer the question, can an illegal alien who is in our country illegally without any lawful status, if they pop out a kid, does that kid automatically have citizenship? The default status quo has been to grant that kid citizenship, but that's not what the law says. It's not what the law has ever said. And John Eastman, who you can follow over here just as a refreshment of your recollection, he is a constitutional law professor and dean, Chapman University, Fowler School of Law, senior fellow, Claremont Institute, all the things. Awesome dude. Make sure you give him a follow on X, and we appreciate his work on this. But here's what has been submitted. Of course, birthright citizenship is going to be a major, major issue, and the Supreme Court is ripe to come down and clarify this. But here is what this says. Now, we're here on behalf of the principles of the American founding and the importance of extending citizenship here only to those who do not owe allegiance to foreign powers other than America. Now, the center has previously appeared before. We've also worked with Ed Meese. Ed Meese was huge in the Jack Smith cases, when you remember. And we've been here before. So you know who we are. But here's where we're starting. They say, all right, Supreme Court, listen. The United States has, at this point, only made a modest request to restrict the scope of multiple universal preliminary injunctions. That's it. We want to just make some minor changes. Nothing big. Now, amicus agrees that the propriety and the constitutionality of these universal injunctions is an issue that desperately needs to be addressed and resolved by the court, and that these cases present a good vehicle for doing so. So you can solve this now, but we also believe that the merits of the underlying issue are ripe for consideration by this court as well, however. So in other words, Supreme Court, 2 issues here. 1, you could stop this injunction stuff now and deal with it this way, or you can just deal with the 14th Amendment issue and just say, actually, we'll just hear it on the merits and say 14th Amendment doesn't cover illegals. The lower courts have all treated the issue in their rulings below as one of pure law. They say it's clear. They say in extensive opinions that the president's executive order was facially unconstitutional. Now, they were right in one respect. The question about whether the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment mandates the grant of citizenship to all but a few persons, like children of diplomats or soldiers of invading armies, is purely a legal issue. And further percolation on this matter is really not necessary. So we don't need any more fact-finding at all. We don't need to determine, is birthright citizenship like impacting this, or how much is it happening, or what are the numbers? Like, we don't need fact-finding on it. It's just a question of law. What does the Constitution say? What does the amendment say about birthright citizenship? They say, particularly, given the fact that the scope of the citizenship clause has previously been addressed by the Supreme Court in prior cases. So you've already talked about it. So just, clarify. So this briefing, therefore, focuses on the substance of the matter. So does the 14th Amendment apply or not? Here's what John Eastman says. All right, contrary to the assertions of the lower courts and others, the respondents, this court, the Supreme Court, has never held that the 14th Amendment compels the grant of automatic citizenship to children born in the United States to parents who are merely temporarily visitors or unlawfully present. Okay, so if you're here on a visa temporarily, or if you're here illegally, you have never, not one time, and I agree with this, we read through Wong Kim Ark here, saying there is precedent for it is a misread of that case. Those people in Wong Kim Ark, he's going to explain it, I'm sure, were lawful in the country. Both the district court and the for Maryland and Washington and others, they say that this is definitively settled. They rely on an expansive reading, which means a broad reading, like they're just reading a bunch of garbage into it that doesn't exist into it. Wong Kim Ark and the other cases, which we've covered here. But this reliance is flawed. Now, here's why. As described more fully below, the actual holding in Wong Kim Ark was much narrower. It was resolving only the specific question that was presented. This question: does the citizenship of a child born in the United States to parents who were subject of a foreign sovereign, they were Chinese, but who had established permanent domicile and residence in the United States, okay? Foreigners, but lawfully domiciled and residenced. Any language in the opinion saying it applies to illegal, like the parents were here illegally, any language that suggests a broader rule, that it should also apply to non-domiciled, non-legal people, is non-binding dicta, which means it's not relevant to the holding. It's just like, oh, it's nice they put it in there, but the question before the court is about this. The holding was about that, about this. You're talking about all this other stuff that's irrelevant. Nice you put it in there, but it doesn't matter. The case in Wong Kim Ark was to people in the country legally. Now, furthermore, the subsequent cases cited by the respondents and the lower courts don't contain any holdings on this question. So why are they citing them? John Eastman writes, as demonstrated below, the statements about citizenship in those cases were either dicta, unnecessary to the decisions, or just background assumptions that were made without any actual analysis. And we're going to go through it. He says, because the Supreme Court, has never squarely addressed this, whether illegals can have babies who are citizens, and has never held that temporary visitors or illegal aliens are citizens, the question is open. It has not been settled at all. He writes, both the lower courts and the respondents here, they misconstrue the scope of Wong Kim Ark. They treat the case as conclusively establishing that virtually all people born here on the geographic soil are automatic citizens. They say there's only a few exceptions like diplomats or soldiers, but they don't read the case right. They dismiss the critical fact, that the parents in Wong Kim Ark were lawful, permanent domiciled people. They just say it's incidental. It doesn't matter. Oh, it's not vital to the court's reasoning. It doesn't matter. Because Wong Kim was born in California, so that's all that mattered. But this is totally untenable. It ignores both the court's framing of the issue and all of the other things are just dicta. The Wong Kim Ark court explicitly described the question presented. Okay, they quoted it. They said, this is what we're here to answer today. It's about a child in the United States whose parents have permanent domicile and residence and are there carrying on business. Is that kid a citizen? Now, this fact is not incidental. It's foundational to the entire certified question, the stipulated record, and the entire analysis. The terms domicile, domiciled, permanent domicile, domiciled residence appear 30 times throughout the majority and the dissent, underscoring the centrality of lawful permanent residence in the reasoning. The legal significance of domicile cannot be overstated here. It's not merely physical presence, okay? It's lawful establishment of a permanent home with an intent to remain indefinitely. Those are factors like checkboxes that show what it is. Something fundamentally distinct from the transient presence, right? If we're having a legal test, if you check these boxes, oh, it's domiciled. If you're over here, you're a resident. You're temporary, right? Accordingly, the actual holding of Wong Kim Ark, the binding legal determination is based on the specific question presented, is literally limited to citizenship of children born in the United States, the parents who are lawfully in the country. Statements in the opinion that suggest broader application based solely on birth without regard to the parental allegiance exceed the factual predicate and are non-binding dicta. Even Chief Justice Marshall explained, saying general expressions taken in connection with the case, but extending beyond the case, may be respected, but they should not control the judgment. Okay. Here's why. You don't want a question coming to the court and then the judges are just like, well, since we're talking about this, I think we should also change this and change that. And this also applies over here. It's like, no. It's narrowly limited to what is before it. This was lawful residents, so they don't get to then include all the unlawful residents as well. Saying the lower courts and the illegal lawyers rely on dicta. They say, well, citizenship of children born to temporary visitors is well settled, but that's profoundly mistaken. This court has never held that. The specific holding in Juan Kim Ark doesn't compel that. Now, they also err in dismissing the importance of parental domicile. It's true the word domicile doesn't appear in the 14th Amendment, but the constitutional text does require subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And domicile is critical to understanding that phrase. Domicile reflects a voluntary and permanent submission to a sovereign's authority, different from just passing through. It's rooted in the foundation of the 14th Amendment. In fact, its drafters made very clear that being subject to the jurisdiction meant owing complete, undivided allegiance, not just merely being physically there. It's more than just dropping a baby on the ground. You got to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. You can't violate the law and then claim a benefit of your violation of the law. If you subject yourself to the jurisdiction, that means you're here lawfully. Have a baby. Indeed, the debates explicitly contrasted permanent settlers, like Chinese migrants with lawful domicile, with temporary sojourners, and explained one gets citizenship, the other does not. Thus, it's not incidental, okay? It's the key holding. It's central to the court's reasoning. The court's holding rests on the narrow ground of children born to lawfully domiciled parents, not on broad endorsement of unrestricted just solely. And history supports our claims as well. The illegal lawyers who want citizenship for their illegalities, they attempt to bolster their argument with a patchwork of historic sources. And they say, oh, it's all well settled. Look, it's well settled. They say, Costa says, well, this case said that the Supreme Court assumed that all persons born here geographically were citizens. That's not even true. We read the case. Here's what the case actually says. As the case notes, the individual whose citizenship was at issue is this guy called Jared Shattuck. He was born in Connecticut before the American Revolution. Wow. So he was there, saw some stuff, man. So he was therefore a British subject at birth who was clearly subject to English rule of just solely. He became an American citizen through his parents as a result of the success in the Revolutionary War, not because of some American rule of birthright citizenship. Okay. So like, well, that case, he kind of got birthright. It's like, what? The Revolutionary War, dude? The issue in the case was whether his subsequent removal to the island of St. Thomas, where by his own act, he had made himself the subject of a foreign power, had taken him out under the act of Congress. The case had nothing. Okay, I was going to say, I'm like, what are we even reading this for? This case had nothing to do with birthright citizenship. I'm like, what? What is this case? Okay, thank you. Now, they also misunderstand another case. John Eastman tells us that they also rely on this other case, Lynch versus Clark, but it's not any better. The CASA brief, the same people who are representing Kilmar, they assert that Lynch conclusively showed that all children born here are citizens without regard to any allegiance of their parents. But they say that's ridiculous. That case was merely a state court decision. It was issued pursuant to an express provision of the New York State Constitution that specifically adopted English common law. So it's not really applicable to this. They cited supposed footnotes and other things. But other people, let's back up here. The citation of Lynch that they attribute generally to the Congressional Globe appears to originate, man, John Eastman has gone down the rabbit hole, baby, says it appears to come from a single reference by Representative William Lawrence during the 1866 Civil Rights Act debate, where Lawrence cited in a supposed note that doesn't even mention the case. So the commentaries stand for the opposite proposition, actually, saying that not just birth, but allegiance as well was necessary for automatic citizens. So actually what you cited supports me, if you look into it. He actually cites it. Natives are all persons born within the jurisdiction and allegiance. See that? And allegiance. So, all right. Well, they also cite this isolated reference. It's also in stark contrast to the Civil Rights Act, 1866 Civil Rights Act. Said all persons born in the United States and not subject to any foreign power. There are other explicit statements in the bill. All the stuff preempted the 14th. Representative John Bingham explained in 1866, clarified that it applied to those born with the jurisdiction thereof and parents not owing any allegiance. Then we got the Act's sponsor and others. If you owe allegiance, they talked about it a lot. The same is true during the follow-on debate over the 14th Amendment and their primary sponsors too. There was subject to the jurisdiction included, full and complete jurisdiction included, the same jurisdiction that applies to everybody. He explicitly noted this would exclude children to foreigners and aliens. Why? They don't fall under complete jurisdiction. Other senators at the time strongly concurred. Oh, yes, here. This requirement rooted in consent and political allegiance is better than just the concept of jus soli, which is by so there's jus soli and jus sanguinis, right? You've got blood by geography and blood by land. Citizenship by blood, citizenship by land. And allegiance is introducing, right? In other words, like if your parents French and you're born to your parents by blood, you're also French, no matter where you're born, kind of a thing. Also, if you're just dropped there, that confers citizenship. So it's like an enmeshment of the two. If you're born here and you have allegiance, then you count. So they also misread these other commentaries from Justice Story. They say, while acknowledging that his view is a reasonable qualification of this, but it should not apply to children of parents in certain situations. His broader jurisprudence confirms this understanding. The judge, Justice Story, who's a very highly cited judge, recognized significant limitations on the application of common law in America. There is hardly any greater conflict between the common law and the principles of the American founding than the repudiation of the perpetual and non-renounceable allegiance to the king, right? The respondent's reliance on Story's remark concerning the state of public law and the near automatic jus soli ignores the fundamental direction and the principles of his analysis. So if it's just blood by, if it's just citizenship by land and not by blood or allegiance, that's an overread. Then they go through some other comments from some other senators, and John Eastman continues. He brings us back to Wong Kim Ark. He says, first of all, they're relying on a bunch of dicta. The court in Hirabayashi, for example, stated that 2/3 of the persons of Japanese descent subject to the challenge curfew were citizens because they were born in the United States. But you got to view that in context. Like, that was not about that per se. Both parents were domiciled in the United States. The decision itself acknowledges that this person was born in Seattle in 1918, parents who had come from Japan to the United States and never returned back to Japan. Other sources say that they were permanently here, permanently domiciled in the United States. So you can't rely on that to automatically extend that principle to illegals. Same thing with another case, and so too with this case. Now, this case is a little bit different. The court statements in the consolidated cases that the children were citizens were necessary in light of the ultimate holding that the parents could not be deported. So it's another deportation case. But what these cases show is that the more expansive readings of Wong Kim Ark that are advanced by them, more than a half century, tell us little about the original meaning. And they are dicta. And so the contrary evidence is compelling. So he just destroyed their case. And now he's going to explain why the correct interpretation is that birthright citizenship is not automatic for illegals. He says the American Revolution rejected the feudal doctrine of birthright citizen subjectship in favor of citizenship based on consent and allegiance. Okay. We are not subjects here. You got to have some allegiance. Understanding the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment requires appreciating the revolutionary break from the English feudal concepts of subjectship. The modern notion of birthright citizenship, an automatic birthright citizenship based solely on the accident of location of birth, is an inheritance from English common law of natural-born subjectship. You're just born, you're a subject of the king. That's not how we do things here. Under English common law, birth within the king's dominions automatically said, you're a natural-born subject, you're mine. Blackstone described this natural allegiance as a debt of gratitude. You cannot forfeit, you cannot cancel, you cannot alter it. This bond of allegiance was perpetual, indissoluble, a feudal tie grounded in the subject and the sovereign. There's no act of consent at all, like little slaves and subjects, which is why I've never really understood that over there with the king and the queen and all that garbage. This conception explicitly denied the right of expatriation. Once born a subject, the person remained a subject for life, whether you like it or not. But then America came around. The American Revolution constituted a fundamental repudiation of this feudal model. The Declaration of Independence proclaimed that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, and that the people possess an inherent right to alter or abolish any government destructive of their rights. And if that were not a clear enough repudiation of the English rule of perpetual allegiance, the Declaration's closing paragraph is unmistakable. It declared that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, and that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British crown. Afuera! Now, as Jefferson wrote even before 1776, the right of expatriation, the right of departing from the country in which chance, not choice, has placed them, is a natural right inherent in all men. The very act of declaring independence, absolving the colonies from all loyalties and allegiance to the British crown, was an exercise of this natural right, a rejection of a perpetual allegiance imposed by mere accident of birth and the English doctrine of jus soli, citizenship by birth, by geography. Thus, the court transformed the legal conception of political membership from one based on birthright subjectship to one based on mutual consent. Citizenship in the American Republic became predicated not on geographical happenstance, but on voluntary allegiance to a political community that itself consents to the individual's membership. The Expatriation Act of 1868, enacted contemporaneously with the 14th Amendment, confirmed that. It declared that the right of expatriation is a natural right and an inherent right of all people. You're allowed to leave. Any declaration, instruction, opinion, order, unless you're, wanted to leave the taxes, you got to really work hard to do that. Any decision, any officer of the United States which denies, restricts, impairs, or questions the rights of expatriation is inconsistent with the fundamental principles of the Republic. Congress repudiated the feudal doctrine of perpetual allegiance upon which the English rule of jus soli had rested. And so accordingly, the interpretation of the 14th Amendment and the Citizenship Clause must proceed from this foundational principle of mutual consent and allegiance, not from the feudal doctrine of location of birth. So then we talk about antebellum law and Civil War stuff. Says the revolutionary shift from the perpetual subjectship to citizenship was not just rhetorical. It shaped the American law throughout the antebellum period. Courts, lawmakers, legal commentators all recognize that allegiance, often determined by parental status and voluntary assumption, was critical to citizenship. Like, you got to want it. You have to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. If you violate the law, you're specifically repudiating the law because you broke in illegally. Early decisions illustrate that the place of birth was not always dispositive for determining citizenship. The court considered the citizenship of a person born in New York near the time of the Declaration of Independence and held that the son's election and character followed that of his father, who was loyal to Britain. Okay. Because the father maintained allegiance to Britain, the son was British, despite being born in the United States, unless he affirmatively disavowed that allegiance when he reached the majority, and he didn't do it. This approach focusing on parental allegiance overriding birthplace, sharply departed from the English rule where you're born and you're a subject. Similarly, in 1875, several years after the 14th Amendment and its ratification, the court reviewed the understanding of citizenship as it existed prior to the 14th Amendment. Chief Justice Waite wrote, writing for the court, observed that while it was never doubted that all children born in a country of parents who were its citizens that became themselves citizens, as for the distinct group of those born within the jurisdiction without reference to the citizenship of their parents, there have been doubts. If their parents are not citizens, there have been doubts. So then we get to 1866 and the Civil Rights Act, which is what turned into the 14th Amendment. And here's what happened. Further compelling evidence that the 14th Amendment was not intended to get automatic citizenship based on birth location. We can look at the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It was the same Congress that passed the 14th. The act sought to secure citizenship for the freedmen following the abolition of slavery. Its opening sentence defined the prerequisites for citizenship, that all persons born in the U.S. and not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed, are hereby declared to be citizens of the U.S. The language explicitly links birthright citizenship to allegiance. Now, by conditioning citizenship on not being subject to any foreign power, the act plainly excluded children born on U.S. soil to parents who were citizens of foreign nations. During the debates, they talked about this too. Lyman Trumbull confirmed this understanding, explained that the clause referred to those whose allegiance solely to the United States was on record. Representative John Bingham, another key figure in the 14th Amendment, was even more direct. He stated the understanding derived from the Constitution itself was that every human being born within the jurisdiction of the United States, of the parents not owing allegiance to any foreign sovereignty, is a natural born citizen. Otherwise, you belong to them. Recognizing that a statute might be repealed or declared unconstitutional, the framers sought to embed these principles and the allegiance requirement in the 14th Amendment. Okay, hard code that puppy into the Constitution. Now, the shift in phrasing from the acts not subject to any foreign power to subject to the jurisdiction thereof was considered a better formulation. It was the same thing, ensuring citizenship was conferred upon those who had allegiance. They were basically the same thing. They just changed it to be a little bit more clear. Now, any ambiguity surrounding the phrase was definitively resolved during the Senate debates. They made their intended meaning abundantly clear. The phrase required full political allegiance associated with citizenship, not merely partial, territorial, or jurisdictional at all. Senator Lyman, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee at the time, basically the same guy as Chuck Grassley right now, when pressed on the phrase about Indians, he said, what do we mean by subject to the jurisdiction thereof? He says, not owing allegiance to anybody else. That's what it means. And if you're a citizen of another country, then you belong to them. He reinforced this by stating it excluded those even owing partial allegiance. Nope, even if it's partial allegiance, nope, it's got to be complete allegiance, complete jurisdiction of the United States. Otherwise, no go. This guy, Senator Jacob Howard, introduced it too. He said the same thing, full, complete jurisdiction. If you're not subject to some foreign power and you're born here, you're ours. Otherwise, you're theirs. These explicit explanations leave no room for doubt. And you should hear this case accordingly. Now, the court's earliest interpretation came out in some of the slaughterhouse cases, decided just 4 years after the amendment was ratified. Now, there was some dicta that the phrase subject to its jurisdiction was intended to exclude from its operation the children of ministers, consuls, citizens of foreign states, and more. Now, this understanding requiring more than mere birth became the holding in Elk versus Wilkins. There, the court held John Elk, an American Indian born within the territorial U.S., but who owed allegiance to his tribe, was not a citizen. They said he's subject to their jurisdiction. Because Elk owed allegiance to his tribe at birth, he was not subject to the complete jurisdiction of the United States and therefore belonged to them. So same thing, saying this interpretation after the 14th requiring complete allegiance for birthright citizenship was shared by the leading commenters at the time, probably hosting their own little podcast. Thomas Cooley, the most prominent constitutional treatise writer, that was their podcast version back in the day, explicitly adopted the view articulated by Senators Trumbull and Howard. Yeah, he published a lot of it. The executive branch responsible for implementing the law initially concurred. In fact, decisions by secretaries of states in the 1880s said that children born to parents only temporarily here were not citizens. Sorry. And they cited Wong Kim Ark. These early interpretations by leading jurists say that's what the law is. Now, you can't change that now. In fact, we also have the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, which also came out. This is the clearest example that the political branches of government did not read the Wong Kim Ark case or the 14th Amendment itself as conferring citizenship automatically. Why? They had to pass the Indian Citizenship Act. This act declared that all non-citizen Indians born within the U.S. be declared citizens. The 14th Amendment didn't do it. The act had to do it. The very necessity of this act shows, yeah, Congress doesn't think that if you're just born here, you're good. Got to have allegiance. That's why they had to pass the Indian Act. If the broad interpretation of the Citizenship Clause advanced, saying it's just geography, if that were correct, then the entire Indian Act would have been entirely superfluous. We wouldn't have needed it because they would have been citizens automatically, but they weren't. Those individuals who were made citizens would have already been citizens, but Congress knew that they weren't. They were in allegiance to their tribes, and we corrected or made them citizens after the fact. It was 60 years that they were not citizens until we did that. So if they're illegal in our country and they continue to owe allegiance to home countries, their parents, if they're not subject to our jurisdiction, then they are not citizens. And Eastman wraps it up. He says, another indication that birth on soil is not understood to confer automatic citizenship also appears in a pre-1966 passport application. At the time, regulations required applicants to disclose not only their own birth details, but also their father's name, date, and place of birth and residence. If the father was foreign born, the application required information on his immigration and status forms. If the place of birth alone sufficed under a well-settled interpretation of the Citizenship Clause, he wouldn't have needed to disclose that. So we do think about parental status as it being important, and that's because of the Constitution. So in sum, John Eastman wraps it up. He says, this court should not only stay the universal injunctions issued in the birthright citizenship cases, but it should also resolve the merits question and say, subject to the jurisdiction thereof means a complete jurisdiction, not merely a territorial jurisdiction, and therefore does not confer automatic citizenship to children of temporary sojourners or those present in the United States here illegally. Submitted respectfully by John C. Eastman, Alexander Haberbush, Constitutional Counsel Group. A very nice trip down history lane on that one, which some good stuff and some great points about how this works and why the 14th Amendment never granted those people automatic citizenship. And hopefully the Supreme Court is able to come in here and rectify this once and for all and explain what it means. But we've got a lot more enforcement happening even around the country. Here you can see Ron DeSantis is getting in on the ICE game, saying ICE deputy director went down there telling us about Operation Tidal Wave that are conducting large-scale operations with zero tolerance towards criminal illegal aliens.
And ICE are committed to these large-scale operations to be able to keep our communities safe, because we will not stop until our American families and everyday Americans are safe in their own communities, because we have zero tolerance for criminal illegal aliens. I want to also highlight some of the historic arrests that were made by our 287G partners, including a Brazilian national that has a history of aggravated assault. We have a Mexican national taken into custody whose history includes kidnapping. And we also have Colombian nationals who were convicted of murder that we were able to take off of the street thanks to the men and women of ICE our federal partners, as well as our state and local officers who dedicate themselves every single day to keeping the American people and the people of Florida safe.
Nice. So they're out there getting after it. Meanwhile, I saw this dude was trying to avoid an ICE arrest, and he decided he was going to hide in a tree.
ICE officials say the 29-year-old is in the country illegally, facing a federal criminal charge after re-entering the country after being deported in 2013. After being in the tree for 9 hours, the man eventually came down and was taken into custody. Homeland Security says there was a criminal warrant out for his arrest, and during a traffic stop, he ran away from his car, then scaled the tree.
Oh, man.
ICE officials
like
say
a little kitty cat. It's hard to get up there in those trees. But he had to come down sometime. So interesting strategy. Didn't know if he thought like they would just leave him alone. Like it was like a bear down there or something like that. Maybe they'd just go away. Just get bored, go home, have dinner. I don't know. But Tom Homan was out today, and Tom Homan is promising some big things are coming soon. Tom Homan says, get ready for some action.
Mr. Homan, will you take some questions? Gateway Pundit.
I got 2 questions. I got another media interview. What do you got?
All right.
The microphone, please, sir.
Mr. Homan, hey, Jordan Conrad's from Gateway Pundit. So the president signed an executive order just this week threatening to defund sanctuary cities for their policies. Why not just arrest the leaders who are harboring and shielding illegal aliens, actually terrorists, from deportation?
Wait to see what's coming.
Yeah. And, well, real quick, your comments on the Wisconsin governor sending directives to state agencies to not comply with ICE and actually stop your deportation efforts.
Wait to see what's coming.
Yeah. Any updates on the military?
I remember what I said. You can not support what we're doing. And you can support sanctuary cities. That's what you want to do. But if you cross that line of impediment or knowingly harbor concealing illegal alien, that is a felony. And we're treated as such.
Any updates on the military-aged men from China that we've seen coming over in recent years?
No. Okay.
Any thoughts on Mike Waltz's tenure as National Security Advisor?
I've been in the skip all morning doing classified briefings. I'm not aware of that. It's not on my radar.
Was he in there?
No.
Just wait for what's coming. It's going to be epic. And look at that little smirk there from Tom. Who's getting arrested, Tom? Tell us. Hopefully, it's all of them. All right. So this is what we've got cooking, my friend. So shout out to John Eastman. Make sure you're following him. We appreciate our very smart legal people writing very smart legal briefs and submitting them on our behalf so that we could read them here. We're grateful to their hard work. So thank you, John Eastman, for writing that and sending that in so that we can enjoy your brilliance. And we'll continue to cover that case as well, my friends. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right. And so, my friends, if you're just joining us, we covered some good ground today. So we talked about this Texas case, Judge Fernando Rodriguez, who certified a class of Tren de Aragua gangbangers in Texas, and then said you can't deport any of them from the Southern District of Texas, and then appointed Lee Glurant of the ACLU to represent all of them for free, I would imagine, automatically. So they get more representation than you do, and they're illegal terrorists in our country, courtesy of Lee Glurant and Fernando Rodriguez, judge out of Texas. So read through that. Certainly watch that section if you'd like to have your blood boil a little bit. We then talked about Kilmar and read how he, in another order of protection case, got exposed with a whole litany of prior abuses. And you saw some of them here: November 2019, December 2020, January 2020, March 2020, May 2020, beatings, damage, hairs, broken tablets, threatening the kids traumatized all over the place. Jennifer saying, they're my kids. They're my kids. They're not his kids. He's trying to lock us in rooms, kidnapping, all sorts of offenses. And there are questions about whether she's under duress as she's being exploited by the Dems. But some good Kilmar updates here. Heard from Bill Malugin, heard from this whiny, snot-nosed prosecutor who's throwing a hissy fit and temper tantrum, Sarah Levine. Having like flashbacks to just dealing with them. Anyways, we've got Ilhan Omar, who's got a potty mouth. Don't know if she kisses her brother with that mouth or what, but we also saw, oh, I forgot to play this clip. Yeah, this was fun too. Drone footage shows illegals making SOS signs. Oh, okay. Anyways, I'm a little disappointed in this video, first of all. A group of detainees at an immigration facility at the center of President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act formed an SOS distress signal earlier this week, and Reuters captured it on a drone. And first of all, they look like they're kind of having a good time, first of all. But secondly, that SOS sign is tiny. It should be way bigger. Okay. We should have like a couple 100,000 hombres down there making an SOS sign. I'm very disappointed by the size of the sign, is what I'm saying. But they seem like they're having a good time. In fact, I saw one of them was like, watch this. Look at this. Yeah, amigo, que pasa? What's up? Good to see you. Trende Ragua. Got any fentanyl? What are you moving on here or whatever? So hopefully the SOS sign gets much bigger. We're going to need like a couple 100,000 more people in there. We want to see like, football stadiums of it. So I'm disappointed in that. Anyways, we talked about that. We talked about the 14th Amendment. John Eastman submitted an amicus brief into the Supreme Court, and we got May, baby. It's May 1st. Woo. So I think we have oral arguments on this, or we got something else coming up on this one soon. So we're getting up to speed on the 14th Amendment case, and we are excited to cover it all. Tom Homan says that there's going to be a lot more coming, and so it's been a heck of a stream, my friends. And now it's time to hear from you. And so thank you for being here. I see some very nice super chats and donos and some new membos who are joining up. Great to see everybody. Thank you for supporting our work and the show here. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you for subscribing if you haven't done it already, because we're almost at a very nice round number, and we'd love to have you join us in that journey. Let's see who's here. We got some donos coming in. Hey, what's up? And what's up, Donut? Thank you, Donut, for clipping for us. Here's what we got today, my friends. Thanks for sending these in. Milo phone bill. Oh, yeah, we got one more day until it's a Friday. There's Snoopy getting his little Snoop dance on. Good to see you, Snoopy. Friday's going to be good. We've earned this one for sure. What's up, Milo phone bill? Would you pay $25 for a pay-per-view Kamala event? No. I wonder how many Smurfettes she will have watching. Is she charging $25 for a pay-per-view event? Is she fighting somebody? If she was fighting somebody, I'd pay. I'd pay more than that. I'd pay $50. Depends who she's fighting. If she's fighting like Joe Biden, I think I'd pay $25 for that. But if she was fighting like Hillary, I think I'd pay $50 for that. Depends who she's fighting and what the rules are too. I might pay $75. Depends on who it is. AOC, I'll go up $75 for AOC. That'd be fun. Chad, what's up? Chad Parsons. We could live stream. It'd be great. Chad Parsons. Hey, if Trende Aragua is a certified class, you put a Republican in there. Yeah, you go up $100. You give Marjorie Taylor Greene. You say, okay, you got this, Marjorie. I'll pay $100 for that. Yeah. Just free for all. Gosh. Be awesome. Chad, what's up? If Trende Aragua is a certified class, could they be held subject to RICO? One of them gets convicted. They're all guilty of belonging to a criminal organization. That's how they got the mafia. Yeah, I mean, so this is the question on the commonality issue. It's kind of logically inconsistent. Like, how can you certify a class of people as gangbangers when they say that they're not gangbangers? And if they say, well, a portion of them are not gangbangers, you say, well, you certified the whole class. So are you saying like a portion of them are, and you're invoking that they are not on their behalves? So the commonality amongst the class is not, they're not common because half of them say that they're not, but some of them are. So how can you say that they're common at all? Anyways, the answer to your question is the courts are playing in like two different arenas right now. Three, really. We've got immigration law under Article 2. We've got the habeas proceedings and the constitutional claims under Article 3. And then we've also got, well, I was just keyed off on a point. One gets convicted. Oh, so then the prosecutions. Yeah. So the prosecutions would be kind of that third prong, which would be the criminal courts, right? So you got immigration courts, the kind of the civil rights courts, and then the criminal prosecutions, which would be RICO under the DOJ. And I don't know. I don't think we're going to see anything RICO related. Although we have seen like some big. There was a RICO actually. Wasn't there a RICO? There was a RICO on. I think Tren. I think it was Tren. Actually, we did cover a RICO case with Tren. I'm 99% sure we covered it here on this channel. So, but it's not going to be. It's separate, right? Like the class action. The reason I was keyed off on this, the class action is in the Article 3 constitutional bucket. Not, and that doesn't translate to the separate prosecution in the criminal courts, which would also take place in the Article 3 courts, but in a separate subset of the statutes. NY, what's up? So I believe in the right to a lawyer, but these ACLU lawyers supporting gang members who are hurting us Americans, is the Constitution a suicide pact? Well, they would say that it is. Yeah, we call this the empathy exploit here. Okay, like Americans have free speech and due process and a lot of empathy and a lot of humanity for the people around the world, and they come here and they exploit that and they say, "Oh, you got to give us our due process rights now." You're killing our country. Well, due process though, and then we have a bunch of people that say we should give them Article 3 trials and all these things. It's lunacy. They try to jail Trump's lawyers. I think it's time we seriously start charging these lawyers or pass laws to curtail them. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of reaction to that. I mean, the ACLU is like, look, it's okay to represent defendants, right? People charged with crimes and to represent people. I get that was my whole career. But what I think we're seeing here is borderline criminality, right? It's unethical for sure. Lee Guillerant was already scolded by a lawyer for doing that. I've got sneaking suspicions about the filings in the Zenas case that we've already talked about. And we've already got 2 judges who have been prosecuted on it. So like if the judges are being prosecuted for colluding and co-conspiring with these gangbangers, there are lawyers who are doing the same too. No doubt about it. They came after attorneys back in 2020 with the 6-5 project, whatever that was, they came after licenses across the board. If you challenged COVID, if you challenged anything that the administration was saying, they try to basically debank you and defund you for a lot less than anything criminal, and for representing your own rights, your own civil liberties, for speaking out against the jab or whatever. This is on behalf of invaders in our country and gangbangers. So it's bad. NY, thank you. Ex-Bears fan. Eek Bears fan. Why has the Supreme Court not addressed their emergency order yet and quietly let it stand? Well, I think it depends which order you're talking about, but if it's the Zenas one or the Boasberg one, it's a good question. I think that they're giving the lower courts an opportunity to see if they can flesh it out or shake it out. But they have not. Personally, I think that they gave them an escape hatch. Like they gave them an opportunity to save face, both Boasberg and Zenas. You guys just, don't go nuts. They went nuts, both of them. One ordered a discovery, one is ordering contempt. And SCOTUS is going to have to come back and fix that later down the line. But they gave them an opportunity and they blew it. Heavy Johnny. What's up, Heavy Johnny? Over on Locals. Good to see you, Heavy Johnny. Says, if TDA terrorists, I don't call them gang members. Yeah, terrorists is a good one. Join the class action suit. Are they now admitting to being terrorists? See, that's the thing, is they're saying no. They say, no, we're not. Well, so that's Trump's point, is how does the proclamation, how can you be a certified class if you're saying that Trump's proclamation doesn't apply to you? So they're basically just reframing that and saying, oh, well, the proclamation applies to people who are wrongfully accused of being Tren de Aragua. But you say, okay, well, if that's the case, there are people who are Tren de Aragua and who would be deported voluntarily. There's already been judicial findings on these things. So we've already said that they're Tren de Aragua, and it's been found that they are. Like with Kilmar, it's in writing. There's an Article 2 judge, immigration judge, wrote it down. So how do you have commonality amongst the class if they're uncommon by their own admissions? It doesn't make any sense. But if what's to stop Trump from picking them up and putting them in Gitmo? Well, there's now other orders from other judges that say you can't move people. Okay, so anybody who's subject to this order, Trump can't move them to like Gitmo now. But I would say new people coming in, you would move them to another location who are not subject to the order. And they're also stopping Trump from just moving people in general. That you can't move them out of the district, so you can't pick them up and put them to Gitmo. But new people, I'd say, yeah, put them in another facility outside the district. Make them get an injunction there too. Chubby, what's up, Chubby Stubby? It'd be nice if the judge could be sure for discrimination by ordering these free ACLU lawyers for TDA members, or at least sue the ACLU instead. Or if the judge could be sued for discrimination. Since I'm sure the judge would be found immune, they always just protect themselves. Yeah, I don't think the judge could be charged with a crime for anything like that. He's got legal plausibility for what he's doing. Now, like if you find out that this judge also has, gang illegals in a casita or something, right? That's a separate thing. But yeah, plausible justifications for everything he's doing. Trump's violating this and he can do what he's doing, but doesn't make it right. Don't. So do we call double due process doo-doo process? Basically. Yeah, double doo-doo process. Doo-doo for all of us, for sure. Not for them. They get free ACLU gangbang lawyers. Hey, Jams Varno. What's up, Jams? Great to see you, Jams. Thanks for the dono, my friend. And for being here. And for being a membo. Mock Schnell is here. Mock Schnell bringing in 20 new membos. More Speed is here. Bringing in Stina Seidel, what's up? Fluffy Cat, another yarn is here. Sergeant Grinch, welcome Sparky Shulls. Good Win Sooners, Dark Avenger is here. Aha, Jen the Couch, very welcome. We got Gina Harbin, Doc Dirtrat. We got Zool McCool, Dyrick and Yvette, John Francis, Thomas Schuler, 4mm, Brewski AZ, Magoo, and Dr. NR. Gifted membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for doing that. 20 new membos coming in. We'll see everybody tomorrow on the member stream Friday morning, baby. Hey, Tortuga Chick. What's up, Tortuga? Thank you for bringing in 10 new friends. We got Nancy Cooper's coming in. The Car Czar. What's up, LW? Eric D. Al D'Alessandro. What's up, Jamin Rooney? Sherry and Connolly. Hybrid Harry. Christoph P. DJ Razor Edge of the Revelator in the house. Courtesy of Tortuga Chick. Thank you, Tortuga Chick, for bringing in 10 new friends for us here. Hey, Candy Hayes, thanks for upgrading your membo, supporting us even harder on the YouTubes. We appreciate you, Candy. This one from NY says, I think we don't have much time before the midterms, just like the grassroots. We elected Trump. We need to lobby for an update to the Alien Enemies Act, ironclad, judge-proof making proclamations. This isn't an intrinsic right. There isn't an intrinsic right to come to the U.S. and to claim asylum, right? And we should not feel morally obliged to do that. If immigration labels you a gang member, no habeas. You can get your due process by Zoom in your country of origin. These lawyers and judges are playing with our lives. Good comment, NY. Trump might invoke habeas and just do it. We'll see. Former Rob, let me start by saying that I've been accused of not being the brightest bulb on the tree here. In spite of that, I need guidance as to why the AEA is required. Why can't they just be deported as plain old illegal aliens? They can't. No, they can. The AEA just accelerates it. Drop the AEA, charge and ship them out. So we don't want to charge them per se. If you charge them, then they get trials. They get all criminal proceedings. So, and the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, even Judge Rodriguez said that they can still use that. The AEA was just to accelerate the process and I think to move rapidly. So that's been stopped, but everything else is still valid. Milo phone bill. So they have a whole class of invading members of a terrorist group. Yes. Yeah. All Tren de Aragua in Southern District of Texas now are class, and they have class action lawyers called the ACLU representing them in America. Number one deplorable. Why do these courts and why do these media outlets think they have more inside intelligence than what the president does? So it's a great question. I think that they're filled with narcissism and colossal arrogance. Number one, they think they know everything and everyone else is a moron, but it's more than that. They don't really care about Trump's intelligence or Trump's justifications. They just want to stop him because it's about raw power. It's not like they're making a cohesive argument in as much as they are just stopping a policy that they don't like. NY says, OMG, Alien Enemies Act specifically says he has this power, and it's literally beyond the Article 3 courts. I know. Judge Rodriguez doesn't think so. Art Pollard, courts have ruled illegals don't get Second Amendment rights, to be consistent, they shouldn't get other constitutional rights either. Otherwise, why don't you give them Second Amendment rights too? Yeah, and they can vote too. Yeah, and they can get on all the benefits that they're already on anyways. And you know what, Art? They can have our houses too, because they deserve it, and we're just Americans. The hell do we deserve? Thank you, Art. It's a great, great point. Leonard, Dems let millions of unvetted aliens enter our nation knowing this would create a crisis. Yeah, well, that's kind of their MO in general. Create a crisis, cause a problem, break the system. People enter a revolutionary mindset. They demand change. And then during that revolutionary period, you seize power. It's communism, and it's what they're doing. That's what the invasion was about. That's what all the debt crisis is about. That's what the inflation crisis is about. They want to hurt you. So you demand they fix things, and that is them seizing power. It's a tale as old as time. Jeffrey Adams. Hey, as usual, Jeffrey says, outstanding legal analysis. Thanks, Jeffrey. All credit to John Eastman. I was just reading what he wrote, Jeffrey Adams, thanks for that. Sketch therapy. How easy is it to prove that Venezuela government sent Tren de Aragua? God bless you. It's good. It's a good question, Sketch. I mean, the judge gave us a little bit of analysis on it, but it wasn't good enough for him. He said Trump hasn't shown that under the AEA that there is an active threat in our country, or that I think he did say it was close enough connected to Venezuela, but not that it was an imminent threat in America. So it sounds like the judge believes that connection is there. It's not second guessing that, but it's the other components that they lost on. Hey, Bruce Wayne. What's up, Bruce? 15 months as a membo, coming up on 2 babies. Thank you for being here. Suspend habeas corpus. Let's be done with it. Trump was hinting at that yesterday, man. And if he does it, it's going to be a spicy meatball, baby. What's up, Natura Verge Chick? Intura Verge Chick. Welcome, Intura Verge Chick, as our newest supporter. We'll see you on the Membo stream tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing you inside. What's up, Heavy Johnny? I served 6 campaigns in Iraq. I even got a ribbon for it. Thank you for your service, Heavy Johnny. Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary. Rodriguez's argument, we need to declare war in order to invoke the Alien Enemies Act, holds no water. Bush declared the war on terrorism, right? What was the opposing force there? And as I am aware, we have not issued a proclamation to end that war. So ergo, we are at war. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to cabin that off. Like, when's the last time we declared an actual war officially with anything? Doan, what's up? Trump should cite Maduro's Minister of the Interior, saying justice, peace, Caballo Rondon, who personally greeted Tren de Aragua members in after Trump deported them. Wow. Thank you, Doan, for that. That's that person. Caballo Rondon. Welcome the Tren gangbangers back, because it's all just one big incestuous family. Hey, Tony D says pupusa. I normally don't eat food that comes in boxes, but I saw these. I had to try them because this show, baby. They're okay, but I'm unlikely to buy them again. I have a brisket in the oven right now from Tony D. You bought some pupusas at the grocery store? Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully you don't get attacked by the Barrio 18 gang now. These come from Sicilia's. Oh, and they're gluten-free too. They're corn masa stuffed with shredded pork and salsa with mozzarella cheese. All right. Well, all right. I'll keep my eye out from some pupusas. Maybe we'll have some pupusas here together. Didn't know you could buy them at the store. Hopefully. Well, enjoy your brisket. The brisket sounds much better. Yeah. So anyways, thank you for that, Tony D. Super fun. I'll look for them. Hey, what's up, Fred Pedamonte? The actual definition of due process is fair treatment through a normal judicial system, especially as a citizen's entitlement. And it comes from Judge Johnny, the little rascally fella you see right here in that little cute little photo. What's up, Fred? Yeah, like, is there a systematized process that people go through before the government does a thing? Like, that's it. Basic. Is there a process? Is it the process that is due under the like, if you get a traffic ticket, it's different due process than if you're charged with a felony. Different stakes, different rights, different privileges, different process. Will Crump, at what point does Congress or SCOTUS stop this crap once and for all? Congress can delete these courts altogether. Well, Congress isn't going to do anything. Congress doesn't care. We've heard from Mike Johnson and Jim Jordan and the rest of them. They're just along for the ride, totally asleep at the wheel. SCOTUS can end TROs with one ruling. Yeah, but I think a lot of them hate Trump too and America. So they're just kind of allowing it to drag on like death by 1,000 cuts. Pinochet, helicopter tours, says, if aliens are to be given elaborate trials, could the worst of the worst be released in the rich neighborhoods like, say, Cambridge, Massachusetts, given orders that if they leave the city, they'll be arrested? Probably not. But, I mean, maybe. Yeah, I mean, maybe. You could just set up a federal detention center there, like in the backs, like right next to Harvard kind of thing. Every time a judge releases them there, you just release them from that facility right next to Harvard. Yeah. Anthony Muma, we need red flag deportations. Send them home now, and they can file for due process from home. That's good enough due process for gun owners, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that is also true. Like all these fake asylum claims and all these fake refugee status claims and all that. No, just file it from your home country. Just send us an email. We'll tell you if we need you here or not. Pinochet, I was activated during the Boston Marathon bombing. I watched and sadly participated in locking down Boston, Brighton, and Watertown, so I know it's possible. Just force the criminals onto the elites, and then they'll hate it. Yeah, remember what happened at Martha's Vineyard when all those like super rich white liberal woman, that one in particular with like her like $2,000 sunglasses and sweatshirts on, and like after they deported the illegals from their little island, they were like, "Oh, we helped them. It's so good." It's the most pathetic thing I ever saw. And they thought that like they went back and they probably talked about like their experience and how great people they are, all of that stuff. So I don't know. They're delusional. It might not do anything. Jennifer O'Connell says, long way to go, but huge thanks for those who helped. Jennifer O'Connell. Jennifer, good to see you. Glad you're getting some love and hanging in there. What's up, Zone Girl? Rob, remember when he was picked up by Kentucky? I think Tennessee, yeah. Police car full of illegals, no driver's license. They were told to take the photos, let them go by FBI or HSA by Biden. We thought he might be a CI or something. He was saying nothing that is going to happen to him if he takes the wife out. He had some connections. So that's another thought too. Okay, why did Van Hollen fly all the way down there? To meet with a wife-beating illegal alien? Like, that's horrible politics. What kind of a joke is that? Maybe CIA created MS-13 or helped facilitate that. He was down there talking to them, and this was just an excuse. And I heard another congressman say that those people that he was trafficking were women, but I haven't validated that. I heard a congressman say he got stopped for trafficking with a car full of women. I thought, what? Because he said they were coming here for construction, and I didn't realize it was all women. I figured it was just like 8 dudes back there, but I don't know. Sheila Poo. Anyone who has never held a job in the private sector knows you aren't who has ever held a job in the private sector knows you aren't entitled to the job you have. That includes sobbing, snotty Sarah. I know. And to act so enraged and entitled is a good word, but like almost vindictive, like, how dare you do this to me? It's like, wow, wild. Ravicus. Do you think that most of these crazy liberal white women are so upset because that Trump is leveling the playing field by removing DEI? These women fear that losing the government as protector and provider, that they will once again have to rely on men to provide and protect. Well, that's a good question. I fear this is their biggest grievance, but no one is talking about this. Yeah, it's a good question. I think, I don't know. I think it's probably a cultural thing, like a sociological thing. My experience has been that a lot of that type of female is usually like alone and single, and so they don't have a lot like of meaning or purpose. You know, it's like if you have a kid and a family and something to preserve, you're more conservative because you want to leave a country that is good, you know, and like kind of like the same but better. And so since they don't have a lot of investment in their immediate nuclear family, they go to try to find meaning externally, which is fighting for causes that are mostly created for them, right? Like they're causes designed by them for them, which is why they're so animated and invested in it. And it's like this self-repeating, almost this like cycle that's self-reinforcing in many ways. I don't even know what they're so upset about, to be honest with you. I don't think they do either, but they just need something else to do also, many of them. It's their meaning and purpose. Like, this is their career, is to be professional victims and complainers. So you got to do that. Former, what's up? You can't hold LEOs responsible for Jennifer's refusal to contact the DA's office and follow up on a secure criminal complaint. I don't blame the cops. Yeah, she should have called. I mean, if she's getting beaten like that and stuff, she should have called the cops, obviously, but she was probably afraid she'd get killed if she did that. You do understand that LEOs get jerked off all the time. What? Get her photographed, examined by a physician, write a report, and follow up with the DA. And in my opinion, she got the result that she wanted. Yeah. She didn't want him to be deported or jailed, but she wanted him to stop. This was the only option for her, essentially. Take an order, serve him with the order. He calms down, things relax. Hopefully he changes, whatever. But why didn't she call the cops? Because she knows he's a gangbanger and he would be deported. Rick D, what's up, Rick D? Hey, thanks so much for mentioning my presentation last week with just Rhonda. DNA can be very complex for most people to understand. It was great being able to explain it to people. So shout out to our friend Just Rhonda. Rick D was over there hanging out. Links in the chat. Thank you, Donut Mind Me, for sharing those. Sounds like an awesome stream, Rick. And Just Rhonda, she has the best and most fine emojis on the entire internet. Pinochet, what's up? Are there any Russian asylees? I don't know. It's a good question. If Trump invoked the AEA against Eurasians, would the courts go as hard? Good question. Definitely not the Russians, obviously. We're seeing, I'm trying to think about some comparisons. Like, we just saw one of the judges, I think, release somebody who was involved in the student stuff. I don't know if he's pro-Palestinian or whatever he was, but I think he just got released today. So in other words, we're seeing a pattern here. Like, they love gangbangers and Hamas or something. It's kind of what it's looking like. Now, they'll say free speech, and, you know, those cases I think are a little bit different. I don't know if that guy was well, I think he was a visa, right? He was a visa thing too. I'm not familiar with that case, but if it was the Russians, yeah, no, the Russians are like a totally disfavored class here. So yeah, they would be obliterated. Favored classes are mostly terrorists in this country. What's up, Lenny? Please smash the like button. Please like and share. Please subscribe. Please share everywhere you can. And you can tell him I made you do it. Thank you, Lenny Malley, for doing that. Acid Burn says, hey, have a baby and get a dog, Robot Rob. Have you guys checked out the Rob bot at AskRobG.com? Also on our website, RobertGovea.com. You can talk with a robot version of me in the old studio. What's up, Will Crump? Hey, with illegals in America, even if they don't vote, they harm us because they all go to deep blue districts and increase their seats in Congress. Yeah, illegals are counted as a part of the census. So all the sanctuary places say, come over here. They get more representatives and more power. Then they have anchor babies and have citizen babies who are also going to be beholden to that same ideology that captured their parents. They're trying to change the entire country, clearly. John McGarvey, what's up, John? Shared this. This person, from Derek Evans, former Georgia Democrat House candidate Carl Spaberry has been arrested. Whoa! That's according to this person called Derek Evans. Interesting story there from John McGarvey. Have to look into that one. The Tree Godfather, what's up? Thanks, John. Says, illegal immigration is used by anti-whites to white erase America and to permanently change our demographics. It's absolutely sinister. Well, yeah, I think that's a pattern across the world, really. Massive immigration and massive societal division, and in the name of and sake of diversity, to really destroy the country, to destroy the culture, to destroy the Constitution, to destroy the language, to destroy the family. The list goes on and on. All part of a multi-pronged attack. Immigration is just one of them. Doan, what's up? Constitutional review of birthright citizenship also puts the damper on the BS behind morons simply identifying as things that they are clearly not. I know. Yeah, they keep telling us that they're TROs or that they're, lawfully here, whatever. We know they're not. We can see their injunctions dangling between their legs. Mizzy M, thank you, Mizzy M. On Local says, hey, thanks for keeping up with all this, Rob. There's a lot of value in getting information straight from the source documents, although most people would never be able to translate them like you do. I feel like I'm getting the real news. Thank you, Ms. EM. Yeah, honestly, I understand what you're saying. I will listen to clips here. We play a lot of clips here. So I'll listen to clips of people and I'll just go, like I heard Abby Phillips the other day screaming about something. I'm just like, she's just lying through her teeth, or she hasn't read the case at all. She's either a moron or a liar, but whatever's coming out of her mouth was a lie. And then she cuts off everybody who tries to correct her. I'm like, this is wild. Wild. What's up, Doan? Native Americans weren't even included in birthright citizenship. They weren't born, and they were born in the U.S. They weren't granted citizenship until decades later. Doan, you're ahead of the class, Doan. You're reading ahead. That was John Eastman's same argument in the Indian Citizenship Act, right? 1920s. Great comment. What's up? Heavy Johnny says, Homan said, stand back and stand by. Tom Homan. Stand back and stand by. Remember that? Oh, gosh, that was a lot of fun. Good to see you, Heavy Johnny. What's up, Savage Studios? Thank you, Robert, for all you do. And thanks, watchers, for a great streaming community. What a nice comment, Savage Studios. I agree with you, man. I'm so grateful for you, for the community. We have amazing people here. I think we're doing good work together. I'm grateful for it. Thank you, Savage, for saying that. Hey, Mikhail. Mikhail Heim. It's Heim time. What's up? Hey, Rob, just got here. Did Van Hollen release a letter stating that he went to El Salvador and spoke with VP about foreign policy after being turned down by Bukele? Yes, he did. We read that letter yesterday on the show, Mikhail. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Is that like a Logan Act violation type of situation? Yeah, it was an interesting letter. We read it. Did we read that? Yeah, I think that was yesterday, right? It's Heim time, bringing in 20 new membos. Thank you, Heim time, for doing this. Lethal Old Fart is here. No. Great. Carolette is here. Don Stout, what's up? TC, Truth Seeker, Nurse D, welcome. Paul Borbely. We got James McGuire, Pablo Aki. What's up, Tulio Solarozano? Pound for pound, 147. We got Gooey Barracuda, Shifra Morgan, Aaron Troyer, Aaron. We got Juarez Playa, Squeak 6723, Angela Jack Mac. What's up? Jackson Mac. What's up, Alley Cat and Mima McCheese? Gifted membos, courtesy of Heim Time. Thank you, Mikhail. We appreciate you for bringing in 20 new membo friends. Heavy Johnny says, look at the number of illegals claiming asylum because they'll be tortured in Venezuela. Is there a humanitarian crisis we're all missing? Sounds like they're killing and torturing millions of people down there. The Dems should be in an uproar over this. Well, no, they don't care about that. They just care that we take all their people in and make them Democratic voters. But you're right about that, Heavy Johnny. It's like, wow, there's a lot of refugees, a lot of crises around the world. If they stayed in their home countries, then they could be a part of the disaffected class that would demand a fix from their elected leaders. But their elected leaders get to just use them like a pressure relief valve and send them into our country, and we got to deal with it. The Jackals of Terra Argentum says, why would you even need to pass laws? Most of these lawyers took foreign funds through NGOs to go after a president. Pretty sure that's already a crime. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to find money crimes. So don't get me wrong. I'm sure you could find something going on there. But the question is, are they, how far outside of the lines are they actually coloring? And who's going to be willing to prosecute them on that basis? Somebody from the DOJ. Don't get me wrong. I know that there are many, many crimes going on here, but we're looking for stuff like that meets the level of backdoor Dugan taking someone out the back door or something like that, right? If they have plausibility to say a grant came down, it came into our account, we use that to fight for democracy or whatever, it's going to be hard to get a jury of people, I think, to convict in those manners. But there are crimes. Like, I think Norm Eisen and those guys, they have been committing conspiracies of fraud and corruption that you could find crimes and charges on. But you got to prosecute them. Thank you, the Jackals. What's up, Barbara With? Barbara With says, Rob, my next Substack is called Awakening from the Narrative, Understanding the Psychological Effects of Propaganda in the 21st Century, and is how to break through to my lib friends. Great show, lots of inspo for my research. Barbara With, you're speaking my language. So I appreciate that you're doing that. I'd love to read your article, so please shoot it my way once you're done with it. But I would also, we're working, like, this is why we're creating the research files at the Lodge, watcherlodge.com, is because I want to create accessible, shareable bits of information that are almost like, not like a meme. Like a meme is an internet slang term, right? For just like a cute image or whatever, but knowledge that can be transferred quickly and easily. So we're creating these research files. So like if we go to Kilmar Abrego, like everything is here, right? All the documents, FAQs, all the arguments that we've covered in the show, all consolidated into one. The letter even from the senator, the photos, the cover up, everything is here, so that when you're talking with some lunatic lib, you can just literally share this thing with them. Just say, oh, no, here it is. Like, here's where I get my info. Where do you get your info? Oh, okay. You read some stupid article in the New York Times? Well, here's everything we know about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Okay, it's all right here, including the memes. So it's all free. Watcherlodge.com. You can check it out. Share these around. But like, that's the goal. We want to have better information, more cohesive arguments, and consolidated ideas that we build in a compendium that are shareable and useful in time. So we appreciate you doing that, Barbara. And I'd love it if you posted it at the Lodge too. Shared your link. What's up? First instance of Sploopy Keter class entity. Wow, look at the size of this little monster right here. That little hippo. Is that a little hippo? It's a cute little fella. What's up? Object class Keter bringing in 5 new members. Object class. Will's coming in. Welcome, Will. TAC, Blue Waffle Hunter Immortals joining us. We got this one from Joe Schmo and Trixie's Travels gifted members, courtesy of Object Class Keter. Thank you for doing that, Object Class. We appreciate you. Good to see you again. Haven't seen you in a while. Hey, Mikel. Hey, 3,000 to 500K, Rob. Thank you, Mikel. I know it's going extra slow. But we're going to get there, Mikel, one day at a time. Thank you for that, Mikel. Appreciate you. What's up, Will Crump? Why is the Easter weekend SCOTUS order still standing? I don't know. Got to ask them, I suppose. I think they're waiting for the lower courts to settle it out, basically with Boasberg and contempt stuff and Zenas and her discovery stuff. It's SCOTUS. Do whatever they want. Thank you, Will. Melanie Snare. What's up, Melanie? It seems like the judge awarded a no-bid contract to the NAACP. Basically, yeah, to the ACLU. Yeah, to the ACLU. Definitely got that. It's here. You're the lawyer for the entire class of people. And I don't know where they're getting their funding, man, but if they get $1 from the U.S. government, that should be cut off permanently. Cut off. G-Men. If the new detainees were held at Gitmo, what court has jurisdiction? Good question. I don't know who takes jurisdiction of those cases. Maybe DC? Is it a DC thing? Like who? I think it was probably held in DC. I'm trying to think of like the other Iraq war detainee cases. I think they were filed in DC. Sketch Therapy. Are deportees now getting the Obama due process? No, they're getting like double doo-doo process where ACLU lawyers get appointed to represent them for free. They get more than you would get if you're charged with a crime. Crazy. Mighty Marcia, what's up? What is going on with the new fueling from a federal judge that says ICE cannot make an arrest without a warrant? We haven't looked at that one too closely, Mighty Marcia. I'm trying to go down the memory banks on that. I think I saw Margot Cleveland talk about that. And I think her take on it was that it was just in alignment with the statute. Like, in other words, it wasn't overbroad. Like, there are certain types of arrests that you do make with a warrant, and there are some that you make without a warrant. And I haven't read it, so I can't comment to it intelligently on it. But I think what I saw from Margot was that it tracks the statute, and she does good analysis. So I'll have to read it though. But thank you, Mighty Marcia, for even flagging that you saw that that case is of interest. Maybe we'll check it out tomorrow. Thank you, Mighty Marcia, for that one. Hey, Mikel Heim, can we put prisons on American soil the way we have bases around the world that are on it, even in Cuba? Well, yeah, I mean, so we're holding these people in certain locations. So, for example, in Texas, the problem is right now is that they're issuing injunctions that cover that land. So, like, we could build multiple prisons and store them there, but then you've got courts that have jurisdiction over them that say that you can't do certain things with those people. And as a reminder, these are not citizens, right? These are people that we want out of our country. So we don't really want to build them and house them forever. We want to get them out of here so other countries can deal with them. They're not our people. What's up, Greer? Harold Greer bringing in 5 membos. Thank you, Harold. Rita Miller is here. Polly Miller. We got 2 Millers in the house. We got Julianne Barry. What's up, Ray Gutowski? We got WVU Mountaineer Layer with Kenny joining up as membos. Great to see you, Harold Greer. Thanks for bringing in 5 new friends for us. Jonah Finn. Would SCOTUS's travel ban ruling been better retroactive deportation play? SOS, send hombres south? Is that what they're asking? Venezuelans launched a covert war. It's still a war, even though they haven't declared war. We're still in a war, whether they want to admit it or not. And I think Trump ultimately, I think his best play is just going to be to just file him right through INA and through the DOJ through that process and get him out immediately. Good to see you, Jonathan. Tony, hey, I don't know if you figured out by now, but the lyrics I sent you the other day in my super chat was Katy Perry Fireworks. I was just funning with you. Oh, no, I had no idea. I understand what that was now. Boom, 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 something, something. Boom, 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 ding, 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 bop, 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 beep, boop, boop, something, whatever that was. It was Katy Perry. Now I know. Thank you, Tony. Hey, it's funny. I just didn't, I don't know. What's up? It's funny. I should have known, but I don't. Thank you, Rob. So if the class loses, does that mean that all class members will be deported? But I'm not really part of the class. Did you sign this document joining the class? Yeah, you're part of it. Good. Bye. Well, I don't think so, because then they can still just file their individual claims. Like the judge is on his own invoking everybody as part of the class, but even people who didn't voluntarily avail themselves of the class are a part of the class. So if the class loses, I think they would still have their right to file their petition for habeas. What's up, Liberum X says Democrats are comrades and illegals must leave immediately. It's a good comment, Liberum. They are comrades, that's for sure. Sharpie Guy says Kamina's pay-per-view is an Act Blue last-ditch effort, maybe. That's the only common sense I can derive about it. Glad you're back to normal tomorrow. I work in my shop all day, so I'll actually get to pay attention to both streams without interruption. I know we missed our double streams yesterday and today, but we're back on schedule tomorrow. Good. We'll see you tomorrow, Sharpie Guy. So she's not fighting anybody? Is she fighting Act Blue, at least? Object Class Keeter. Once we codify the law that non-citizens are not counted in the congressional census, I think at least some Democrats will back off defending illegal immigration. You mean when there's no real benefit for them anymore? They're not going to care about the humanitarian component to this whole story? Never was about that. It was about power and money. Doan, Kilmar was driving a known human trafficker's truck too. Yeah, I think a convicted human trafficker. And he said he was in there for construction and he had no valid driver's license and the FBI let him go. And we don't know who was in the back of that car, but I heard a congressperson today say that they were women in the back of that car, not dudes for construction. Rub some dirt on it. I watched Rick Donner on Rhonda's webcast. Rick was very informative and clearly in command of the topic. Yeah, Rick is a sharp dude. No doubt. We can confirm that from Rick's shares and commentary and analysis. So that sounds great. Check it out. Just Rhonda's channel with Rick D in the house. Barbara with, I know, let's work together. We love you, Barbara. Yeah, send me your Substack. Share that with us. It sounds great. I think that there's a lot of psychological stuff happening with the Democrats, and there is probably a way and a good strategy to get them off of it. Like in many ways, they're just scared and broken people. And it's hard not to blame them. A lot of people's brains broke during COVID. They've gotten brainwashed to hate Trump. Their brains broke. Even guys like Bill Maher, like, I admit it. So there is a way to win people over. I think we do it through attraction, not so much through promotion, one of those ancient bits of wisdom from the 12 steps. But we're doing it, Barbara with, and I can't wait to read your stuff. And we'll definitely be out there together and be in touch. Thank you, John McGarvey. Here is another Democrat arrested from Real Robert and charged. This person's name is Joshua Castro. Oh, in Arizona. Yes. Thanks for bubbling that story back up, too. I wanted to come back on that and get the indictment on that. in Arizona. Joshua Castro was working for our governor Hobbs, arrested for smuggling illegals. Yeah, I want to get the indictment on that. Sketch Therapy. Is Trump's due process equal to Obama's? Then it makes them hypocrites. Yeah, no, Trump, they want more due process than Obama gave them. They want more due process than Biden gave them. They get free ACLU lawyers right now. What's up, Humble Pie on Locals? Thank you, Humble Pie. Says, thanks for all you do, Rob. Well, this is very nice. Says, sorry I didn't have any coins in my purse when I sent these earlier messages. Humble Pie, well, thank you for sending these in. No, we're just glad to have you as a member. No obligations at all. Thanks for joining up on Locals. Hey, Tony Hay Munkets says, Katy Perry may not be an astronaut, but she did fly on a rocket. Maybe. I'm not really sure. Yeah, we saw that. The Bimbo Brigade to outer space. Wild times. And Jeff Bezos. Interesting. Mikhail, Rob, I meant American soil we own in other countries. Like we own a military base in Cuba. That's on American soil. My cousin was stationed at it. Oh, well, then I think you get the same objections that you got with Guantanamo. I mean, they were upset about Guantanamo from the beginning, too. They were screaming about that. I mean, even Obama came in, I'm going to close down Guantanamo. Remember all that? Never did. So, like, a lot of this has been going on for many administrations. Bush was doing it. Guantanamo was a giant battle back then. And what we see is it's happening again. So I think if you did that, they would just say, well, now you're in control of them and you got to bring them back. So like if you sent them to Guantanamo in Cuba, they would say you got control of them. So bring Kilmar back rather than just dropping them off and handing them off to their home country. G-Man, have you seen the 314 Bondi memo about entering homes without a warrant? If there's a suspected TDA member in there, it's concerning to say the least. I have not seen that. No. Yeah, warrantless entries into homes. See, now you start talking about due process for Americans. Like, what if you're an American and you got ICE breaking into your home and saying, well, we have a right to do this because we're looking for an illegal. So I don't really care. It's my home. So get out of my home, right? So you start crossing those lines. I've not seen the memo, but it would be worth a read if that's what it says. I think that's kind of a problem. What's up, Rick D? Rick D, thank you for bringing in new membos, 5 new membo friends. NRL is coming in. Michael Brown, VMe is coming in. Michael Lee and Michael T, gifted membos, courtesy of Rick D in the house. Thank you, Rick, for doing that. And Sketch Therapy says, my point is they crucify Trump for doing what Obama did. Well, yeah, and I think if you're looking at some of these numbers, right, like Obama's deportation numbers were much higher than Trump, I think, by some metrics at this point. Now, to be fair, every time you hear that talking point, that's a little scammy, because let's say you let in 10 million and you get rid of 1 million, you're still netting 9 million into the country. So if Trump is letting in 0 and deporting 100,000 instead of 1 million, you're still reducing your net. Okay, so that's what we want. So a lot of people are upset with Trump, like, well, he's not getting rid of us. Okay, well, how many people are coming in? Okay, got it. Okay, so the total number is getting reduced. So just take it easy. Yes, we'd like to be doing 1 million people a month or whatever it is, or a year even. But the point is, we plugged the holes first, and now we can start pitching out the water. All right, so my friends, thank you so much for sending those in. Really nice and generous of you. Really grateful for your support, for being here, for watching, for sharing the show, and all the things. Let's say hello to some friends on X. I think we forgot to say hello to our friends on X yesterday. My apologies. What's up, Mini Tika? Thank you for sharing us over on Rumble. James Pepper with a couple of posts. What's up, Jody? What's up, Tam? Galactic Emperor. We got Z Shaded. Says, here's the next 100 days. Dream big. Here's what's coming up next. It's going to be called the American Ocean, okay? It's not the Atlantic anymore. It's now of the American Ocean. The whole thing. All of it. Z Shaded. Hey, what's up? Galactic. If you file a class action lawsuit, you have to be a member of the class. The ACLU wants them. Yeah, it's the same question, right? It's a great question. How can you be a member of a class of gangbangers if you're not a gangbanger? That doesn't make any sense. Hey, Wonder Woman says, snotty, whining, crying baby prosecutor. It's true. It's what she was. Snotty, whining, crying baby prosecutor. That's what she sounded like. Rob, I love you. Can't wait to get home. I shared your show with Don Jr. What's up, Don? Got to request you to be invited to the White House press briefings. I submitted my form, but I should probably, get to know some people. Jody, hey, great show. Says, with complete alliance needed, can we now remove any dual citizenship reps in the government? Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, no dual citizenship for anybody. Hey, what's up? This illegal TDA gangbanger looks pretty armed to me. Oh, yeah, no, he was. That was the judge's gangbanger or the wife's gangbanger. Well, I don't know what was going on with that guy. But yeah, no, he was out there with guns. That's how they got him. Why do judges want predatory aliens in communities, says Rella Bella? Because they hate us. And the country. James, what's up? So the bailiffs in the judge's court will need a warrant to arrest anyone who acts up. If the judge sees a crime, they cannot do anything unless they have a warrant, is what James is asking. Fred, Rob, countries that actually declared war on the USA in World War II. Okay, so Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, they were official, and Albania did too. Wow. Okay, so they were all official in that filing. Official enemy combatants: Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania. Right? We knew the big three Axis powers: Germany, Japan, Italy, but the rest of them too, huh? All right. Good to see you, Fred. Thanks for the education. Boning up on my World War II stuff. James Pepper, Cuba is in under DC. That makes sense. Danny, do we even have a justice system? When are the lawyers going to stand up for themselves? We can't do it. It has to be lawyers. Stand up and file or get another job over there on X. Great to see our friends on the X tubes. Thanks for following us over there, for watching over there, and for being amazing. Doan is here. Says Doan wrote this: ICE warrantless arrests made under the AEA. SCOTUS steps in, mandating at least 36 hours notice, allowing plaintiffs court access before deportation. Is that like breaking right now or something? Doan, thanks for that. Did SCOTUS just step in? Do we have breaking news? I don't know. All right, so thank you, Doan, for that. And Boopsy shared this one. Oh yeah, this one's fun, right? Hey, 12.3 million deportations under Bill, 0 injunctions. 10.3 under Bush, 0 injunctions. 5.3 under Obama, 0 injunctions. 100,000 deportations, 30 injunctions. Yeah, that's what's happening. So we do need to I think have context around that when people start coming down on the Trump administration about the slow deportations. Did you ever have dozens of judges violating the Constitution in order to do that before? No. So they're working through it, and we got some good faith in the team. I mean, Tom Homan is not backing down at all. So my friends, thanks for sending those in over on X. Really great to see you, and on the tubes and on the locals. Very much appreciate your work. It's a beautiful Thursday. Very glad that you're here and joining us. Now, we are going to wrap it up here on the evening. We are going over to locals, watching thewatchers.locals.com. We'll debrief, hang out for a little bit. Otherwise, my friends, membos, we will be back tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time for the members only stream. Otherwise, my friends, we will be back here at the same time, same place, 3 p.m. Arizona, 6 p.m. Eastern time for the show. Before we wrap it up, I want to thank our amazing mods and our meme smiths modding the fort down for us. K-Bean, Donut Mind Me. We got Carrie B, Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, and Janek, keeping things oh so nice and beautiful around here. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. We're going to leave it there and unplug for the evening. But tomorrow, we are coming back here to get into it again. It's going to be a beautiful Friday. We're excited about that. But in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very, very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.